Right up first, for information only, is an update on the Joint Compatibility Transportation Plan. Project Manager Katie Ketterer is here to present, along with Alex Atchison from Parametrics. Thanks, take it away.
I'm pleased to present to you this evening about the Joint Compatibility Transportation Plan. And as Council President Good now noted, Alex Atchison will be joining me in the presentation a little bit later. So with that, I will get started. It looks like I need to be allowed to share. If that could, feature could be turned on. Thank you. All right. Can you see on my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Here we go. All right, so the goals for the presentation this evening are to provide to you a brief recap of the JCTP project and our progress so far, to review traffic and parking issues the project is seeking to resolve, to outline challenges in resolving those issues, and to discuss potential visions for the final outcome. So the Joint Compatibility Transportation Plan is a project that is to study some of the unique traffic and parking issues that we have in Bremerton because of the location of the naval base Kitsap Bremerton. So as you know, that comes along with traffic surges, limited parking both inside and outside the fence, limited multimodal opportunities, and along with forecasted population growth for the city of Bremerton. So we partnered with NBK Bremerton through a DoD grant to create a plan that will address these challenges. It's a $750,000 project, and the out year for this study is 2050. Some of the goals for the project are to examine the existing and future needs for transportation modes serving Naval Base Kitsap Bremerton, to develop solutions to resolve the deficits, to evaluate options to mitigate the transportation and parking demands, and to develop a prioritized implementation plan. This graphic here is really great at showing how we want to balance our solutions all under kind of a goal of livability. So some of the issues that we've taken a look at through this study are the crash history, the current traffic conditions, different plans like the comp plan and planned improvements that are going to be happening, future job and population growth estimates, transit routes and park and rides, worker driver bus routes, parking conditions, bike and pedestrian conditions. We also did a large survey regarding travel habits. So we take all of these plans, this data, along with public input, and we start to understand what some of the issues that we have are. So the next couple of slides will cover what we found when we examined these existing futures and some of the factors that play into it. So 60% of the traffic that's coming into Bremerton during the peak period is attributed to NBK Bremerton. That is a huge influx of vehicles. There are 6,300 plus NBK Bremerton commuter vehicles that park outside of the gates during the peak period. And there's over 10,000 pedestrians that enter the shipyard gates over the course of each day. This graphic here shows that kind of the general locations of where people are parked. There's about 3,000 vehicles in the downtown core. And then there's another 3,400 or so that park in the neighborhoods that surround the shipyard. A 2017 parking study confirmed that there's large numbers of commuter vehicles parking illegally in downtown and in neighborhoods. And what we found through public comment in the survey and also ticketing information is that parking behaviors are very entrenched. Convenience is king. People want to park where it's convenient and easy for them to access the shipyard, and they're willing to risk an occasional ticket to do so, or pay for a prior lot. We found that surface level parking lots in downtown are not the highest and best use of the property. And we found that sometimes vehicle queues at the base entry gates can cause backups onto the city streets. So we looked forward to the future. And I want to mention that when we look forward into the future, we use a traffic model to do that. And we take into account land use and zoning for that traffic model so that we understand where in the future people are living, where they're working. So we're distributing the planned growth in certain centers where our comp plan calls for it. And so we've got growth in the UGA as well as growth in centers and growth in downtown. So what we found is that by 2050, there will be significant congestion throughout Bremerton. PSRC's Vision 2050 plan forecasts substantial growth in Bremerton and in Gwinnett County through 2050. As the city pursues their growth plan, conflicts between residential parking and commuter parking will increase. So as we start to increase density in those neighborhoods and in downtown Bremerton, there will be more need for residents to park there, and that'll conflict with commuters that want to park there. And also, as we all know, Naval Base Kitsap Bremerton has plans for a multi-billion-dollar shipyard modernization. So NBK has reported to us that they are very close to capacity for their regular employment, and they don't anticipate a lot of growth in the future. However, those shipyard renovations will require contractors and their workforces in the interim. So we do know that there's going to be more people going into the shipyard. So this graphic here, let's see if I can zoom in on it just a little bit. This graphic here shows some of the time differences, and this is just one way that I'm using to highlight the congestion issues that we see here in Bremerton and how they'll change over the next 30 years. So as you can see, let's pick out here 11th Street. So free flow it would take you 4 minutes and 30 seconds to drive this route. And right now during the peak hour, it would take you 8 minutes. And in 2050, it'll take you 10 minutes and 20 seconds. So, that 25% increase between now and 2050 is pretty significant. So to recap the issues, NBK Bremerton operations do create traffic surges and congestion. Continued growth will worsen traffic conditions in the future. Neighborhood parking by commuters impacts livability and causes conflicts between NBK Bremerton workers and residents. NBK worker parking in downtown suppresses economic vitality by limiting parking for business patrons. And population growth will increase pressure on existing infrastructure, decreasing Bremerton's livability and degrading at the same time base accessibility. So this is a little guide through how we're moving through the study. So first, as I discussed, we came up with our issues. And the next thing we did was we took our issues, ideas from experts, public input, and we funneled that into a huge list of potential solutions. We had hundreds of potential solutions on our list. So the next thing that we did from there is we take our potential solutions and we split them into different alternatives. And what we want to do with those alternatives is we want to evaluate them to find out if one alternative, as we set it up, will provide good solutions, good improvements to our issues, or if individual projects are working. So to measure the efficacy of those solutions in the three alternatives, they were evaluated against a 2050 no-build scenario. Some of the evaluation metrics that we used were travel time, travel reliability, mobility, safety, active transportation, economic vitality, parking, and base accessibility and livability. I want to talk about these for just a second because they come up again later. Base accessibility, we're talking about how easy it is for PSNS workers to access the base and to park close to the base. And for livability, we're defining that as how inviting, safe, attractive, and accessible the community is for residents and visitors. Projects that contribute to livability are bike lanes, sidewalks, lighting, comfortable bus stops, urban landscaping, and others. An example of a specific project that supports livability is the rechannelization of 6th Street that would alter the 4-lane configuration to a 3-lane configuration with bike lanes, making 6th Street a lower stress road for active transportation users. All right, so in this slide, I'm going to talk just a little bit more about the alternatives that we looked at. So the alternatives were organized around parking strategies so that the team could understand how traffic volume and parking patterns impact the potential solutions. So our first alternative was to relocate commuter parking. So what that means is that we are assuming that there are fewer cars that are coming into downtown Bremerton. We're assuming that cars are parking outside of the downtown core. We're supporting those with transit projects. And it's really a change in the travel pattern, so there's fewer cars coming in. An alternative 2, we had a scenario where we support commuter parking pretty close to where it is today. So as growth increases in the city, population and job growth goes up over the next 30 years, so does traffic. And we assume that those go in tandem together. So that was supported with capacity projects, and the traffic patterns in that scenario stayed pretty consistent with current traffic patterns. Now, the third alternative, we wanted to look at an alternative where we had the base build parking on the base or close to the base on the west side of the base, because that's where they would, potentially there would be space for parking. So that one, just like alternative 3, it's the same scenario for traffic growth. And we have similar capacity projects supporting that alternative, but the traffic patterns for the city kind of shift to the west side of the base. So that's kind of the difference between alternative 2 and alternative 3. So what did we learn from the evaluation of the alternatives? Several projects showed really clear benefit and will definitely be recommended in a preferred alternative, including intelligent signal systems for major commuter corridors, um, active transportation improvements targeted for commuters, improvements proposed with the SR 303 corridor study, and some safety improvements. Something really important to note is that none of the alternatives showed improvement to all of the evaluation metrics. There's no silver bullet here. In particular, there was a lot of tension between that base accessibility and Bremerton's livability. To get into that a little bit more, projects that really improve livability for Bremerton, such as those road rechannelizations to accommodate bikes and pedestrians, were pretty incompatible with alternatives that don't reduce the number of cars coming into Bremerton. And I want to note that when we're talking about how many cars we're moving from downtown Bremerton, we're talking about 2,000 cars from the peak period. So that's the big 2-hour rush in the PM. And, 2,000 vehicles, it's not everybody. We're not trying to have everybody, use transit. 2,000 is actually, a pretty reasonable percentage of the number of people who are commuting into Bremerton that would shift to a different mode. Okay, so moving on to further next steps. So we talked about our issues, we talked about how we got to potential solutions, we talked about how we split those into alternatives. And so next is trying to figure out what our preferred alternative is. And we want that to be an achievable preferred alternative, right? So we said that, none of our 3 alternatives were a silver bullet. So we know that we have to pick and choose projects from each of the 3 alternatives to come up with a good solution. So, the question then becomes, how do we balance that? Is there one alternative that that plays a little bit more into the basis for our preferred alternative? And what really drives that is the overall vision for the project. And that's a big reason why we are here with you today, is because we want to make sure, as we're heading towards this preferred alternative, that we understand what the vision should be. So, here's where I want to explain why we need this guidance. To get this preferred alternative, we really need guidance on the vision. Well, why? Because the vision informs the assumptions the project team will make about the out year of 2050. So we've got kind of 2 big main visions here. We have assume that there are more cars coming into downtown Bremerton from growth. That would be like alternative 2 and alternative 3. Or we assume that there are fewer cars coming into Bremerton, more similar to alternative 1. And we have an alternative that drives livability a little bit more. So what the big difference between these is that it's pretty easy for us to assume that traffic increases for growth. That's a pretty easy assumption to make. The capacity projects that are needed might not be easy. We're going to get into that a little bit more, but making that assumption is easy. Assuming that there are fewer cars coming into downtown Bremerton is a little bit harder for us to do, because it's really driven by people's behavior, and changing people's behavior is more difficult. So we're going to talk here in the next few minutes, over the next several slides, about some of the benefits and challenges of each of these visions, and how we think we can make the vision work. So, and really it comes down to that behavior part of it, and all of us, it's going to take a lot of different people working together to make a behavior change work. So, Alex is going to take over from here and take you through a little bit more in detail about our capacity vision and our livability vision, and then we'll have discussion. Before Alex takes over, are there any questions?
Not seeing any. Oh, actually, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Really appreciate it. So free flow is like the kind of time that realtors talk about, like only 3 minutes from downtown. Okay.
Yeah, it's the weekend, you get all green lights, that's free flow.
Okay. Yeah, I had a couple of questions on both your issues evaluations and your evaluation metric. Where were the impacts to residents considered?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that for me?
Totally. You had a frame called issues evaluation, and then you had another one called evaluation metrics when you were moving towards the preferred alternative. And I was wondering where the impacts to the residents were. I didn't see them.
Mm-hmm. So we considered the impacts to residents in many of the different evaluation metrics. We have livability, which is kind of a holistic measure of what it's like to live in Bremerton with all of these conditions. We have active transportation, which I would consider to be an impact to Bremerton residents, and how easily they can get around town through different modes. And then we also have those travel time reliability and travel times, because Bremerton residents are impacted if they need to get around town at 4 o'clock. They're impacted by the traffic congestion that's caused by MBK Bremerton. So did that answer your question?
So the impacts to residents were, it seems like largely the impacts to residents who drive. Is that correct?
I might be able to help out a little bit, Katie. I think what Councilor's looking for, Mark's looking for, might be there would be right-of-way acquisitions that are basically going to start to cut into residential properties to increase capacity if the capacity was our goal. Also, parking in established neighborhoods where we're infilling with more density. We all know this. This is what we've been doing for years. Actually, is going to create more demand on our streets just with the residents. The current, if we were to go with also the status quo, we know the tension is going to create something that, and I won't get into too many superlatives here. I'll let Katie continue, but I think we can guess where that might go. In the walkability portion, if you're building a walkability in a cycling type of community, the mix with capacity and intense focus and design, that doesn't mesh. And we have, as a city, all of us that think are on the same page with what walkability and cycling do for community development. So okay, I'm starting for jumping in. Those might have been specifics I thought might be helpful. Those were all considered, Councilor, for livability.
Thank you. And my final question is, I can understand that if you're making shipyard money, that a ticket here and there wouldn't count for much, but have we tried towing?
I think that would be a question simply for Melinda Monroe, who's the parking administrator. So I would let her take that. As far as how far they go right now, but we'll talk a little bit about parking policies later, and we can talk about how far to go.
Thank you.
Councilmember Coughlin.
Thanks. A quick clarification. Katie, we're talking about cars coming into downtown and looking at number 3. Is downtown here being used to more of a broader sense than I'm used to, not just the downtown near the ferry terminal, but also the west side?
Yeah, we're kind of broadly looking at the downtown business core as well as the neighborhoods that border around the shipyard.
Okay, including like Charleston and okay, I just want to be clear on there because I saw the west side and I'm like, that's not going to affect downtown, but okay, just wanted to be clear. Thanks.
I think Melinda's on. She's got an answer for us regarding parking.
It's not really germane to this. If you want to shoot, Melinda, if you want to shoot on an email with some details about when we get to extreme. So I think we're back to the presentation.
Okay, great. Well, then I will shoot it over to Alex.
Okay. Can you hear me first?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then Katie, if you could drive the yes, thank you. So one of the things we want to walk you through now is just sort of that vision comparison, because what we talked about earlier was the vision is really what's driving how the preferred alternative is going to be packaged together. So I also want to start off with recognizing that the vision for livability includes some capacity improvements and it includes traffic signal efficiency. So it's not completely void of those things. But so the first thing we wanted to know is like, how are we measuring success between these two visions? For livability, the success is measured by, improvements to the overall livability and economic vitality of Bremerton and the neighborhoods adjacent to downtown. Katie touched on it really well. It's a nice place to live and work and shop and, just be. And then success for a capacity-centered vision is the improvements to travel times for commuters during peak hours. And one thing I want to point out is that as we're looking out to that year 2050, and we've accommodated all of the planned growth in our models, the capacity improvements to travel times are often trying to get back to sort of the no build or a little bit better. They will likely never be better than what they are right now. You really have to build a lot to get better. So moving on, the growth is addressed in the livability vision by strategies that reduce a portion of the cars on the roads in downtown. Like you said, we're not trying to get everybody out of their car. We're just trying to have some people shift into other modes. And then for capacity-centered vision, that growth is addressed by adding capacity to allow for more cars on the roads. And then for livability, we have assumptions about people shifting modes, maybe going to transit or walking or biking or a combination of those. And those are really driven by policies and some projects with transit, which I'll touch on later. For capacity, we're kind of assuming the status quo. People who are driving are going to continue driving, and the percentage of people taking the bus are probably going to remain the same. And then finally, one big difference between these two is the livability vision is really, it's really necessary to have interagency cooperation to be effective with Kitsap Transit, with the city, with the base. Everybody needs to be working together for all of these things to happen. And for capacity-centered vision, it's really capital projects that are led by the city of Bremerton. And that can come into funding concerns later on, which we can touch on as well. So we'll move on to the next one. So I wanted to go over some of the, how do we achieve a capacity-centered vision? Well, we're assuming, that mode shift from Mr. Jones driving into work by himself is probably going to remain the same. There'll just be more Mr. Joneses driving into work by themselves. And so what we looked at was how can we accommodate the growth in vehicles that is consistent with population growth? Well, we looked at adding travel lanes, turn lanes. We really focused on the key arterials in the city, Burwell, Kitsap Way, 304, 303. And what we found with some of the projects that we found where could have some benefits is they often had significant right-of-way needs in order to get those projects built. We saw that over 35 parcels were impacted. This is a really high level, planning level kind of design elements we're looking at, but also, over 40 relocations were going to be necessary for some of these projects, especially on Burwell. These projects are also expensive, between 80 and 160 million dollars, and this does not account for any additional parking that would could be built as well. So the infrastructure is expensive. And then we looked at parking facilities in the downtown, and on the west side, could they be considered to resolve neighborhood parking conflicts? Because we know we want to try to move people out of the neighborhood that are parking illegally. But one of the things is that we found is that there may be an option to build more parking as part of this alternative. But without some other things in place, it would not reduce the amount of cars coming into downtown. It actually would encourage more people to drive into downtown. So it kind of is contrary to that livability vision. Let's move to the next one. So benefits and challenges of a capacity-centered vision. The outcome, one benefit, it's less dependent on cooperation with other agencies. However, some of the challenges, the capacity projects are really likely only keeping up with growth. They're not going to have major improvements to traffic congestion, traffic conditions. And then there's a safety element to this. More cars on the road means more conflicts between cars and pedestrians, between bikes and cars, and so it can create a less safe environment on the roadways. Parking conflicts are going to remain under this vision, and they may actually worsen as growth increases. And then large capacity projects are really costly. They're disruptive. They require a lot of right-of-way, and they're often really hard to fund. And there may be some environmental constraints that can prevent them from being funded or constructed, and it's specifically related to social justice issues like right-of-way impacts to disadvantaged areas, equity, things like that. So we want to consider that as we move forward with any of those. And then, as Katie pointed out, one of the things as part of this, the capacity centered, was one of the rechannelization projects that's proposed on 6 actually is not adding capacity, but it is accommodating more users of other modes. But so I wanted just to point out the graphic on the right-hand side really kind of speaks to that, how we're trying to just, with capacity projects, often just meet the growth that's there. For alternative 1, where we would, that's sort of that livability focus, where we relocate commuter parking. We saw on Kitsap Way that there would be travel savings in 2050 by almost 2 minutes. So that's pretty significant. And then, for some of the parking centered alternatives, like support commuter parking, which is that kind of capacity centered, it really is just keeping up with growth. There's a little bit of improvement for the third one, but not as much as if we could reduce the amount of people coming into downtown, just some of them. So that's the goal there. Let's move to the next. So I want to focus on how do we achieve a livability centered vision, and this is really driven by 3 issues or elements, which you can see on the screen. One is parking policy and parking strategy. And then followed by mode shift incentives, and then transit capacity. As Katie mentioned, parking behavior is extremely entrenched. It is very hard to change people's behavior just by simply asking them to change their behavior. Often you need to have twofold, with some incentives and also some benefits for them to change, and also some things that are really going to force them to change their behavior. And this is what this vision is and kind of builds upon. I want to be really clear. We don't see that any of these alternatives are going to be developing quickly. We're asking just sort of to set the vision and to set these things in motion. This is not going to come out of the gate and have all of these things change all at once. It's going to require a lot of cooperation with other agencies. And so we can start with, I guess we can move on to the next one, Katie, for parking policy. That's a good one. So in 2017, the city conducted a parking study of the downtown and west of downtown, and came up with recommended parking strategies to help reduce impacts on the neighborhoods and businesses. This is still a very valid study in many ways. Many of the strategies identified did work to improve livability, and actually would have some benefits for the capacity-centered vision as well. We would recommend phasing many of these and for the livability vision and implementing them to coincide with other projects. That's one of the major issues that kind of tripped up people in the past was simply putting parking restrictions on businesses and residents and not also providing improvements to transit or other elements to serve these displaced commuters wasn't really a viable option. So our plan bridges that gap between putting some parking strategies in the downtown area that restricts parking, but also providing alternatives and opportunities for people to get out of their car and still get to work. Let's move on to the next one. So should we jump, Katie, into some of the recommended parking strategies, or is that detail we can do later?
I think that's detail that we can do later, but I would just, emphasize that that parking policy, that's really, those are things that would be guided by a council in the future. So that's kind of the council's cog in this machine.
Okay. So assuming there was, strategies and policies in place that discourage people from parking illegally or maybe making they're not as willing just to pay that ticket, how do you incentivize people once their parking's been removed to just simply, get into another mode? And one of the things we learned early on through the public survey that we did, specifically where we reached out to naval-based kids out, was that people, there's key issues that people are experiencing that, makes them want to drive. People choose not to drive transit because service isn't frequent. It takes too long. If you miss that bus, it's only every hour. You're not really incentivized to get on the bus. Cost was not an issue that was identified. Parking is simple. It would be easier if van pools and carpools were closer to the gates, and it just would incentivize people to use those modes and get out of single occupancy cars. People indicate that they would use transit if they had an alternate ride for emergencies. We all know that to stay work late or something happens, you got to go pick up your kid at daycare in the middle of the day because they're sick. I need a way to quickly get where I need to be. Biking would be used more, we heard, if there were more dedicated lanes and it was safer for more people to want to bike. And then what we also found was that there are a lot of programs already in place, but people need to be educated about them. So we need to help these people really understand the benefits that are already there and then expand these programs even more. So and provide more flexible options. This would be in conjunction with those parking policies. And then the third cog, which is a key, is, now we have these policies in place and we have the benefits that are really going to encourage possibly people to get out of their car for a little bit. Then how do we make transit better? We looked at improving signal timing to allow buses to bypass congestion. So your bus route and bus ride is closer to what it would take if you were just simply driving. And that included what we call business access transit lanes. We looked at those on the 303 study, and that would just really significantly improve travel times for transit because it's only transit and then people turning into businesses on 303 that can use those lanes. And then we would work with Kids Up Transit to increase frequency of service. And there's a little bit of a chicken and egg here, and we would work with them. They need to see the demand before they can make an investment in more buses and more drivers and things like that. So it is an iterative process. But Kids Up Transit is very much on board with this livability vision based on our conversations with them in previous meetings, and they're really optimistic. Also, that there's an availability of funding for transit projects. There's a lot of funding out there, and they think they can get some funding for projects that would help this livability vision in conjunction with the city. And so benefits and challenges of a livability-centered vision. So it will reduce the parking in the neighborhoods. It benefits, improves walking and biking experiences, and it increases the availability, of parking for those businesses in the downtown area. It's consistent with the city's plans to increase density and economic vitality. One of the challenges, it would reduce commuter parking, and that's going to be unpopular with some commuters. The mode shift goals that we are hoping to achieve here would, reduce congestion and environmental impacts as well, and it would improve travel times. Parking costs, really dependent on partnerships. The city's not driving all of the costs for parking. But what we looked at as part of this vision was providing more parking kind of outside the nucleus of downtown, and just, as people coming down 303, if we could grab some people and park, they could park there, over to the west and also south of west of downtown. We looked at building, approximately 2,000 parking spaces, and that ranges from between $50 million to $100 million, and the cost is really dependent on the number of stories in a parking structure. Once you go above 3 stories, it gets significantly more expensive. That's some of the things we looked at, so that could be a challenge as well. I can turn it back over to you, okay?
All right, so thank you very much, Alex. And this kind of brings us pretty much to the end of this presentation. And just to facilitate a conversation about which vision the project team should strive for with a preferred alternative.
Okay. All right, thank you, Vice President Chamberlain.
Thank you both for that presentation. I have a couple of follow-up questions about this study. Okay, so this is the most recent parking study that we approved, right? About, I want to say 6 or 7 months ago, council approved it before I came on. Maybe it was actually just a few months ago. So it's the most recent parking study that was approved by council that was in partnership with Naval-Based Kids App. Is that correct?
That's right. And we actually started the project right at the beginning of the pandemic, which is a great time.
Oh, okay. Okay. I apparently am behind the times, but I don't know how long I can use the newbie excuse for. I think I'm over. I don't think I can use it anymore. And so you said that this one is looking forward to 2050. I'm just going to be kind of honest. This was a lot of really good information. But sometimes people are a little kind of like negative about all the parking studies that we've done and we've had. And so I don't live in a directly impacted area. And so I just want to know, do we foresee another parking study in another 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? Or will this one kind of bring data that's going to carry us, actually out for I don't imagine it's going to be good until 2050 or just forward thinking to 2050. But is this the kind of parking study that's going to give us enough data to satisfy some of the issues that we're having? It costs a lot of money for this study. It's kind of what I'm getting at, right? Will it be good? How long do you think this study will be good for?
Well, this study is designed to be forward compatible with our next comprehensive plan, which is why we chose the 2050 as the out year. And also, this is the joint compatibility transportation study. It's not directly a parking study. So what we actually did is we utilized a lot of the data and information from that 2017 parking study because it was still good. So we weren't, doing that part of it again. What we're doing here is we're kind of jumping off from that study and bridging the gap where that study didn't really, like Alex said, it gave a lot of parking policy recommendations, but didn't provide recommendations for the transit and the traffic type of projects that need to go along with those in order to make them successful. So that's where we're carrying on the baton.
Yeah, and I imagine, just looking at what's slated to public works, all the way for the next 5 years, know they have projects that they're not going to get to for quite a while. And so to try to slip something in there is going to be difficult. So I imagine that you'll be working in conjunction with Public Works to find out, feasibility of some of these recommendations.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but
No, you're good.
excited. I want to mention that one of the really great things about this study and the reason that we jumped into a partnership with DOD on this is that it opens up some new funding possibilities for
Okay.
us through.
I like to hear that.
So they have funding that's specifically targeted for defense communities, and by doing this study and prioritizing different projects and getting the Navy on board with those projects, we can access some of that funding, which will be a great help to us.
Okay, so this parking study was an effort to, a joint compatibility study was it's kind of a springboard to, even though we did pay a lot of money for it, there could be money coming back from it to help us to more issues. We needed to front some of this funding in order to possibly get a return on it in the way of, is it through just DOD, or does it also help open up state funds? Do you know?
It
Or
could
state
potentially
funds?
open up state funds because there are some defense community grants available through the state that are kind of designed to help be the match for the DOD funds.
Great.
And we did get a grant for this project, so
Okay.
it is $750,000 project, but our grant amount, I believe it was $625,000. So
Okay, thank you for that
DOD
update.
paid the vast majority of this study for us.
That's wonderful.
And we're still in the midst of it, so we're not done quite yet.
Okay, I really liked the analysis that bringing more parking garages just brings more activity into and ruins livability, something I think it's kind of silly that we're talking about it, but it's okay. We need to talk about it. We're gonna, there's some places that have those scooters, the green scooters and the green bikes, and they're in the sidewalks all the time, but they are convenient. I just wanted to think about other alternatives, transportation alternatives. There's riding a bike. I used to drive Lyft. I don't anymore, but Lyft and Uber. Ride sharing programs, carpooling. I didn't really see any of those kind of small scale options presented in this study, because really, if people are looking for an individualized strategy for transportation, they need more options than just a bus or a car, and so I'm just wondering, about those smaller scale kind of ride sharing or carpooling, or what are incentives for that? Is that where you might be going next, or was that just something not included in the study?
Oh no, it absolutely is included in the study. Micromobility is huge.
Right.
And
Micromobility. Okay, write that down.
Yeah, and it can, bridge that gap for folks trying to get around. So today's presentation is really very focused on the big
picture.
Okay. I think if you start to look, and all of this information is available on the city's project webpage, there are more detailed materials regarding the specific alternatives. And if you really get into the weeds on those, you'll see tons of those kinds of projects, van pools and car pools and those kinds of things. And then active transportation projects as a whole were actually included with all of the alternatives because they're huge and they're very needed.
All right, thank you, Katie. That's Ms. Ketterer. That's all I have right now. I'll defer to my other colleagues here on the council.
Thanks. I just want to, so again, this was information. They're updating us on the progress of this joint compatibility transportation study. Katie, is there specific input you're looking for tonight? I think you said it a moment ago, but I'm asking you to sort of restate anything you want from us.
yeah, it would be great to hear what the council's feeling about which vision they would like to see us striving for, or are they, more looking for the capacity or the livability vision?
Okay, so just kind of, this, I hadn't built a lot of time for this, so I see the mayor's got his hand up, so go ahead, Mayor Wheeler.
Thank you, Council President. Just so the council knows, I have been, based on me listening to you and to our community, I have been steering the discussion with our Navy partners towards livability. But I'm not comfortable going further without your official backing on that. And I'll explain a little bit more why livability benefits the Navy. And Council Member Goodnow, Council President, you were at the last discussion why where we're going is actually to their benefit. And I'm going to back out for a little while and get these questions answered so Katie and Alex can answer them.
Thank you. Denise.
Thank you, Mayor. That was very, very helpful. Katie, good to see you. And I think Alex, you were involved with the 303 corridor study, and I learned a lot in that process, never knowing that I was going to be sitting in this position now, but it's coming in handy. I obviously want to promote livability. And I'm thinking it's not parking related. I'm thinking as this study also includes, I believe, that commuter section up the corridor on Wheaton Way, which is Chair or Vice Chair Chamberlain's district and my own. The livability portion of that is I have to remind people all the time, there are people that live behind those strip malls, vast amounts of people, and they're really cool. So, I really hope that with these studies, with the prioritization, we're looking at high density coming in along that corridor, that's residents as well as businesses. There's a real great opportunity along that corridor. So I know we're talking a lot about focusing on downtown and about parking adjacent to the shipyard, but it isn't. I know this project isn't just related to that area. And then I want to ask, those relationships that you're talking about that are so critical for the livability option to be successful, how are those relationships going? I'd like kind of I know it's a politically fraught type of question that I'm asking you, but I would imagine that those present challenges from time to time. Even getting the Navy, I think, to the table sometimes or on the phone can be difficult. So, Mayor, I want to take my hat off to you right now because you have done some heavy lifting on this, and you've been pretty tough with the Navy, I think, from my perspective. I applaud you. We might have to award you hazardous duty pay at some point. But anyway, I have a lot of interest in this, but I would like to get a barometer check on how those collaborative relationships are going. And maybe the mayor wants to answer that. I don't know.
Katie, is this the time we've had hard work by our staff compiling data, and there's a point where we get the decision makers around the table, and if I could share with you, the pushback was the appearance of let's just face it, it was pretty blunt language. Original language was to push a war on commuters, against, and I was, and I'll share my perspective. I shared with them that what we're doing is we're building livable communities that responsibly add density, so we can infill appropriately. We can create neighborhoods. By doing that, we increase our supply, and we're trying to get ahead of the supply issue. because prices are escalating. So everybody understands what it takes to have a good neighborhood. You need walkability, you need things close by, you need to be able to cycle, you can't lose your streets all to commuter parking, you can't have 3 or 4 lane roads through the middle of your neighborhood, so capacity's out. Everybody agrees with livability. I believe the clinching argument will be, where does the Navy see their workforce in 30 years? Do they see it living in this city, or do they see it in a livable neighborhood that we're trying to design? Do they see it commuting from somewhere in the outskirts of Mason County and Clallam County because they can't afford to live here? And so right now they're losing that ability to actually afford housing. This is active duty, obviously veterans and shipyard workers. I believe, Katie and Alex, you can correct me, I think that might be something that unifies us behind livability, with the understanding that there's going to be strategic locations for parking rights. And those will require some capacity improvements for that. The transit is on board with that 100%. Transit funding is available for that. And so we've got a pretty, I think we're on the right path with all of this. And I'll quit talking, Councilor Fry, but I think hopefully that explains what's going on with where we're heading with this.
Thank you. I raised my hand to answer Katie Ketterer's question. Livability. I don't mean to throw fuel on the fire, Mayor, but I don't really care about the inconvenience to commuters. I don't care about their irritation, and I can't imagine that any future council will care either. I care about the people who live here. And I think the mayor's strategy of having more shipyard workers be among their number is great. It's brilliant. It's game changing. But I'd also like to say that there are a number of things that people have been saying the Navy could do for at least decades, maybe longer. They could reinstitute a mosquito fleet to pick up at park and rides in Silverdale and Paulsbo and hither and yon. And I'm going to stop talking about what the Navy could do. I'm just going to add that one option, I'm on the Kitsap Transit Board, is there is a van that you can call for like emergency stuff, your kids in daycare. And they have it on Bainbridge, they've got it in Paulsbo, they've got it in Silverdale.
If I could say real quick, I think the council's putting it on me to build these partnerships with our neighboring agencies and jurisdictions. And so appreciate your opinion on and your feelings about that, Councilor. I'll build these partnerships. We'll get this done and steered the right direction. All I need is your support to create a livable plan and choose that option.
Well, I'm going to close with what I started with, which is you want input on vision. For me, livability. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Mayor, do you have something else to add right now?
Oh, no.
Okay, Jen?
All right, thanks so much, Katie and Alex. This was a really great presentation, very informative. Yeah, thanks, Mayor, for also working on this, putting this together. Yeah, high level certainly is framed. I support livability. I don't think the city should be in the business of solving the Navy's parking problem. Again, unless they're offering us a whole lot of incentives, that's worth considering. I don't think it's on us to solve that problem. That said, just some notes I wrote down. I don't necessarily see number 3 as a anti-livability if the shipyard builds parking on their land over there. I mean, that's not as clear number 1, but the case wasn't as strong for that. But I think the main driver I think that's needed is the enforcement downtown, and that'll drive behavior. That right now it's the easiest thing for a lot of shipyard workers to park downtown, and there just isn't many penalties or policies that are really prohibiting that. So if we get the enforcement going, that'll drive behavior of the workers and of the Navy itself to find solutions. I might see missing a little bit is at the same time we do need support for our small local businesses, and so that could be something in the form of parking meters where people get validated if they visit a small business. I think there's certainly solutions there where we as a city can provide parking for our residents and our small local businesses, and protect that for those people, from the shipyard commuters. And so I just suggest going forward, really get that local business input as well, to find something that'll work for them and the residents. But yeah, overall high level livability, no question. So thanks again for the presentation.
Council President, is it all right maybe if we bring Melinda in for another session to explain how much of the parking study has been implemented? I don't believe there's one thing that hasn't been done. Maybe parking meters, that's it. Everything else, it'll answer a lot of your questions. And please ask for parking infraction statistics anytime, Council. We're writing them.
Good idea. Quinn.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Ms. Ketterer and Ms. Atchison, so much for the presentation. I'm going to be really brief with my comments. You're asking for our input, and Mr. Mayor, I absolutely agree with you. Livability, that's where it's at. I think that's what our District 4 residents want as well. And I just want to really thank the administration and both Katie and Alex for the information. When I think about the parking, just as myself, I was like, the base needs to build more parking. Like, I don't know why they're not building more parking. It's really nice to have a study that shows what empirical evidence would actually show, and it makes me think. I commute to UW where I work, and I don't drive because parking is really expensive and parking is really hard to find, and that kind of incentivizes me to take the fast ferry and the link to my office. And I think that creates, I walk to businesses for lunch around there because I don't have car access, and I really appreciate kind of giving us that hard data that we need in order to make decisions. So I just want to throw my hat into the livability camp as well, and thank you all.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Alex and Katie, for a great presentation. I do want to kind of just say, like, the Navy's been our neighbor for a very long time. We've grown up together, and we're definitely codependent on each other's. But I think what it gets to is, it's not the city's responsibility to take on the burden. And to be honest, that's what this new funding, this new studies are all about, is really meaningfully opening sort of that dialogue and figure it out. Doesn't mean that they can do, what we want, but ideally we put together some thoughtful, proposals and things like that, and maybe they can. Among the things that if the Navy could build another garage, it would be great. Don't want it downtown because the garage downtown is a black hole. Right? It doesn't generate revenue. It doesn't move shoppers around and things like that. Although there was some tease of weekend and evening usage of the garage, but I don't think we necessarily even need that at this point. I do wonder if we could look at things like, when I look at what's called the Charleston Gate, I believe, that exits to the west there. There's those, there's surface parking lots that we could just see looking at Google Maps or something. I wonder if there's a way for us to just put into the package, if the Navy were to build a garage here, which we estimate a 5-story garage this big being roughly this much money, it would then, like the numbers Alex shared with us, it would then change, these things or, whatever. Just an idea.
Council President, you're kind of right on what I was gonna say, but the Navy's estimated a 16 level garage is what would be required in addition to what they already have on base to accommodate each their need. We all know that 16 levels of parking garage commuters coming into our city with the economy and the growth already occurring, 5 billion in investment down in our shipyard, a third aircraft carrier. We don't have room for that type of capacity. Nobody wants that. The Navy wouldn't want it. Once you think it through, it doesn't fit. And so there's going to have to be other solutions, and that'll be on me to work with Kitsap Transit to ensure we put those park and rides, get that started, get those strategically located, get the capacity to at least get to those for mass transit. We need a 15-minute service. We absolutely need a 15-minute service for this to work. We all agree on it. Kitsap Transit agrees on that. So, yeah, I mean, we can't even build we can't even build a way out of this one, with the demand coming our way.
Yeah. I think that, the piece though is, they might need a 16-story garage, but let's build a 5, and then let's increase bus service, and then let's get better bike access. I'm so excited about the bike access when I drive it every day coming down Kitsap Way, the new sort of bike lanes that are being put in, the changes we're making at Kitsap Way and 11th. And, and I know that maybe the 6th Street rechannelization doesn't move as many cars, but we got to stop building stuff for cars. It's just never going to get better if we keep building stuff for cars. Anyway, so I think I've said enough. I see Eric's going to stand up.
Yeah, so I'm the remaining council member to speak. So obvious livability, given the presentation, livability is the key. Having been around a while, I'm frustrated because we've had parking study after parking study, as council member Chairman has talked about. I really like the 2017 parking study. I don't believe it was fully implemented. Maybe parts of it have been. There's parts of it that we could put in and really accelerate this, in my opinion. But the frustrating thing, and Katie, maybe you can shed some light on this, is the positive thing I want to say is it sounds like there's money behind this, obviously. So that's a big difference between the other plans. So this is huge. There's money behind it. I understand that. The frustrating thing is it seems like there's always change. The commanders at Naval Base Kitsap, and when the commander changes, policies can change as well. So what precaution or what avenues or what negotiation at what level is this being done with the quote unquote Navy? Who is this dealing with, if you will, when we talk about plans? So the council adopts this. I assume the Navy is going to be okay with livability, or is there going to be pushback, or is that to be negotiated after council adopts the plan? Because it doesn't matter if the city council says this is the way we're going to be, and the Navy all of a sudden says, yeah, that's nice, but we're not doing that. I mean, we have tools in our toolbox, right? We can pull out that parking study and start, as Councilmember Mockwater said, start towing. We can get aggressive, but we don't want to do that. We want to be good neighbors with the Navy. Those are good jobs. This is a Navy town. We need to respect that. So I'll get off my soapbox. Who are we working with in the Navy? Please don't. I hope it's not just the current commander, with all due respect, because they change every couple of years.
So we are working with the current commander. We're also working with, we've had quite a lot of participation from the Navy, including their new community planning liaison, Allison Satter. Might have heard her name before. And we've also been working with Rick Tift, who is basically the civilian CEO for the shipyard. So I think both of those positions create a lot of stability for the future. And as well as working with the commander's staff, which is a little bit more stable.
So let me rephrase it this way. What's the timeline? The council adopts this direction. What's the timeline before we can possibly get to an agreement with the current command staff and say, okay, this is the vision? Are we talking 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
Well, I would hope that we, as we narrow down onto a preferred alternative, that we're working with the Navy before we ask for the council's adoption, so that by the time we get to that point, you guys will know that the Navy is on board with us. The next step that we would really need when it comes to the Navy's cooperation would be when we go for funding. Potentially during next year's call, we would need the shipyard commander to sign off on whichever project we want to put forward for grant. So there would be a lot of coordination with them on that, and making sure that we select a project and that they're on board with that project. And that goes on into the future as we select other projects from our list of projects to implement.
Thank you.
Just one addition also, I wanted to elaborate. One of the litmus tests is coming soon, and that's council be your decision on the 6th Street rechannelization to make it, which is a big decision about where our city is heading as far as what our focus is going to be. So the Navy's, when we go there, it'll be, my plan and goal is to have the Navy's support on that with the understanding why we're doing it. And then the other one is Lynn Wall served in Allison Satter's position for years before. That's the continuity between Navy administrations that turn over every 2 years. And the result of that is the Gorse Coalition, which you now see as has gone through several, about three naval base Kitsap commanders. And so the one constant is that position that now Allison Satter holds, who we work with closely and will continue to do so.
All right. Thank you for the presentation and all the comments and discussions. We look to continue to follow this and see when it's presented. So thanks, Alex, again for being here. Katie, for doing an excellent job as always. We're going to move on to briefings on agenda bill items for next meeting. First up is interlocal agreement with Kitsap County to continue participation with the West Sound Stormwater Outreach Group. Chance Berthune is our stormwater permit coordinator and is here to present.
Good evening, Council, President Goodnow. Yeah, we are looking to get the WASOG is what we call them, the 3-year ILA renewed for a total amount of $63,807 for the 3-year period. So that's $21,000, a little bit over for per year. And the cost is broken down between all the participants based on the population of our areas, based on the most recent census. The West Sound Stormwater Outreach Group is a coordinated program that helps meet a piece of the stormwater permit that is required. This educational outreach program is required as part of our stormwater permit. And the ultimate goal is to reduce pollution from daily activities of citizens and businesses by identifying and addressing certain behavior changes or product use, such as different fertilizers and leaky oil, from cars and whatnot. Natural yard care is one of the things that is being promoted. And this program actually benefits us because we don't have to have a half FTE dedicated to doing just this. Kitsap County has a regular FTE that does this for them all the time. And we get to basically all of us, the partners, which include Kitsap County, Paulsville, Port Orchard, Dig Harbor, Bainbridge Island, and Port Orchard. And then the Navy kind of hangs out on the edge to, support the program. Sarah Wilson is here. She is our representative on the group. She works in engineering and public works.
Good evening.
And yeah, there you are. So this program, it's just great. It provides us with the opportunity to work with the other agencies that are required to do the same thing. So one, it saves us a lot of money. The other thing is that it allows us to generate some really good materials that are consistent with everybody else in the region, as well as what they present over in Seattle, Tacoma, Pierce County, and the other side. So it's a Puget Sound regionally focused program as far as our education and outreach. We do customize some stuff for our own area because we're not like the bigger side over there, unfortunately. So we do work together really well. We started this in 2008, so we go with 3-year ILAs to essentially keep us from having to go every year for a contract or an ILA approval. And it works out pretty well. Some of the projects in the past that we've done is pet waste. Everybody sees the pet waste bag dispensers all over town. We actually have about 55 of those that the city maintains. And then we have homeowners associations that like to get those. The way that program works is they contact Kitsap County, the homeowners association will contact Kitsap County, and we coordinate with them if they're within the city limits as to whether or not they get new dispensers that they ultimately take care of. Not us, but the homeowners association. So it's a good option that expands the program. And it's nice that we get some citizen involvement with it because they have to take care of the dispensers. And it helps get the message out there about picking up pet waste. We also did a program called Puget Sound Starts Here campaign, which is consistent with the Puget Sound region. I did a don't drip and drive for leaking cars, car fluids that are getting out on the roads. And then basically the whole program uses the social marketing practices and methods to implement different programs. And the current program is natural yard care. And there are specific requirements that have to be put together in a report. The report's always online from the previous year in the annual report that I submit to the Department of Ecology, and that can be found on the city's website under Public Works Stormwater, and then it's the annual stormwater report. So if you really want to read into it, it's all there. But the metrics that have to be used to meet the permit requirements are very, very prescriptive. So it's nice to be able to get consultants on board to take our information and crunch them up and put them in a nice report to meet the permit requirements. It also takes a lot less staff time. That keeps Sarah very busy. We're doing stormwater planning and a lot of other stuff. So, this is really beneficial for us. Kitsap County staff manages the contracts, and that's great. So they work with everybody, and then we all of us get together and have a say in which actual programs we're going to focus on and address. So it's a pretty good group, and it's well established. So we're asking for this to be approved for the next 3 years. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Just real quick, is this basically the same agreement we've had in the past?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Eric.
Yeah, I was gonna mention, this was discussed at Public Works last night, and Chance did an excellent presentation then, did another excellent presentation just now. The packet's full of all the background information, including sharing costs. As you mentioned, this is a continuation of Chance mentioned of previous ILA is done every 3 years. I recommend this for consent agenda.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, how does consent sound? Good. All right, consent agenda it is. Thank you, Chance and Sarah, for your presentations tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks. Up next, proposed public hearing on resolution adopting the 2023 CDBG Home Policy Plan. Sarah Lynham is our new CDBG Program Administrator and is here to present. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Council President and City Council members. I just have a short presentation that I will pull up. Sure. Okay, and can you all see what I'm seeing? You should see a title slide there. Perfect. All right, so what I have here before you today is the 2023 CDBG and Home Policy Plan. This document serves as the kicking off point for our competitive funding process for the upcoming program year, which is 2023. This is for both the Community Development Block Grant and Home Funds, which we receive from the Department of Housing and Urban Development each year. The document is updated annually and serves as our guiding principles on how we utilize the funds available to us, and provides guidance to applicants on items such as eligibility, the funding allocation process, and information on any regulatory requirements and local policy decisions. There are no major changes to the policy plan from the previous year, but we do highlight our funding priorities for both the CDBG and home funds, which are laid out in our 5-year consolidated plan, which we are in the 3rd year of. For the City Council, in terms of next steps, the policy plan adoption would kick off the program year for applicants wishing to apply for either CDBG or home funds. The document itself has been released for a 15-day comment period, and thus far we have not received any comments. Applications open at the end of June. They are reviewed in August by the Project Review Committee. The Project Review Committee will then recommend projects and submit those recommendations through an annual action plan. And then that action plan will go before City Council for a public hearing at the end of October. In terms of our funding priorities, which are laid out in the consolidated plan, for both CDBG and home, they remain the same from the previous year. For CDBG, that includes projects in the city which can demonstrate a low to moderate income benefit, either through clientele who meet that threshold or an area-wide benefit. Infrastructure and capital improvement projects, projects which improve and preserve affordable housing, and projects which expand economic opportunities for low to moderate income residents. And for our home funds, priorities include projects which increase affordable housing stock. And give estimates for both of those funds. All projects must meet one of those funding priorities. They must be considered an eligible activity and meet a national objective as determined by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And this just gives a nice overview of some important deadlines for our applicants. For all new CDBG and home projects, applicants must reach out for a pre-application appointment. The application opens June 30th and the link will be posted on the city's website. Applications are due July 28th and are reviewed by the Project Review Committee during the month of August. Funding recommendations are published for a 30-day comment period, and again, will go before council in October. And I'm available for any questions. I may bring in Director Spencer if I'm not able to answer them, but I'm here for questions. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you, and welcome again.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much, Sarah. This is great. And I look forward to working with you as CDBG chair for the upcoming committee. For the open public comment period right now, how is the communication sent out for that?
This was prior to me starting, so I might ask Andrea, but my understanding is that it would have been published in the Kitsap Sun, likely, and then any comments would have been sent to Sarah Ashawi, who was in the position before me, and then any of her emails are getting forwarded to me.
And so it's published on the city's website, and I believe there's also e-news that goes out in communication about that.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask about the email as well, because I hadn't seen anything on this and I couldn't find anything in my inbox. So I just wanted to make sure we were really reaching folks, especially if we had any public comment. I don't know if we typically get public comment for this document.
All the time that I've overseen the program, which is what, 17 years, I don't think we've ever received comments on the policy plan because it's very much, it isn't about the projects themselves, it's about the federal eligibility criteria. So there isn't a lot of creativity in this document. It's mostly about the logistics of making sure we're publishing, here's what the HUD standards are, and here's what our estimated funding available is. So it isn't a real creative document that there's lots of opportunity that people would say, we want this or that.
Fair enough. Yeah, so what we're kind of getting at is for the public hearing next week. Are there any particular types of comments we'd ask people to give input on? Or, sorry to be blunt, but are we just kind of checking a box that, yep, this has been in the public domain and moving forward?
I think largely this process is about checking the box. The federal, the HUD standards require us to have 2 public hearings each year. And we hold a public hearing on the policy plan because it makes logical sense. And then, of course, on the funding package that comes forward from the grant review committee, that's the one that we usually see comments on, that you'd see agencies come out and give comments about what's being funded and mostly thanking the council for what has been chosen through the grant review committee process.
Okay, so I guess for next week, we're not, I would like to just thinking ahead to, what type of comments may we get that would actually cause us to change anything? It sounds like there's nothing that we can conceive of at the moment. Okay, that's why I want to set those expectations.
Yes, we might have had comments 4 or 5 years ago when we had our consolidated plan, which was adopted. So think of the consolidated plan is the longer term vision for our CDBG funds. So we've already established that consolidated plan. So that's like the city's comprehensive plan. Here's what we want to happen in our community. And then this annual policy plan is the implementation of that 5-year strategy. Years ago, if you remember, we had a very targeted approach to spending our funds where we concentrated our capital projects only in the downtown. And we might have received comments at the policy plan at that time to consider expanding the area. And so we took those comments under consideration. And when we adopted the new consolidated plan 3 years ago, we expanded that out to be citywide. So that was the only controversy that we've had. And at the time we did the consolidated plan, it made a lot of sense to consolidate and target that funding, but that doesn't make sense at this point in time.
Okay, no, thanks. The only other comment I wrote down was I noticed reading through the whole plan that the only requirements are, I guess, legal ad in the newspaper and for some of the city website. And I'll just keep encouraging and also getting it on social media just to reach as wide as audience as possible and other communication channels. Just so folks know when it gets announced, it'd be fantastic. But anyway, thanks for the presentation and look forward to working on this year.
Thank you.
Denise.
Yes, I just want to clarify or just ask maybe for some verification that I hear about this fund or this pool of money in relation to affordability, to affordable housing, quite a bit. And so has there been any sway in the funds available and their impact on affordability when we're looking at housing with these particular funds? In other words, I'm assuming that the funds are being used to their maximum impact around affordability.
And so there's been some variability over time, as in we used to receive a lot more money, and year after year, our resources are dwindling from the federal government. So we try to make the dollars go as far as we possibly can. And the projects that are funded with these, they're helping the lowest of the low income, or in the case, we've got some really great projects in public works and in parks that help our vulnerable populations for ADA accessibility in parks and sidewalks. So there's not a lot of funding that's dedicated to that source. So we've been real successful in helping that population with our funds. So I'd say 100% of the money that we get goes to those low, moderate, and vulnerable populations. Does that answer your question?
All right, Jennifer.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Andrea, for assisting with this presentation. I know this is just like you just have to present it. I have a couple quick things. Under policy changes, it looks like there's it's the first main page of your document, but the second page of our B2. There's just a really small grammatical error under policy changes. Number 1 should say home funding will be used to increase. Small problem.
Oh, thank you.
No problem. Yeah. And so I saw just a couple clarifying questions about the use of these funds, and that is really disappointing to hear that we're getting less and less each year for CDBG, because it used to be used for so much. And so, have you ever worked with? I don't even know if community frameworks is even a thing anymore. But do you work with those partnering organizations for helping find homes for folks? Yeah.
I can say for years and years, Community Frameworks is one of our grant recipients of home funds. So they administer our purchasing houses, getting down payment assistance, and getting people into first-time home buyers. So they're a great partner with us, and they're a recipient of our funds. It seems like year after year after year.
Good. And so they're still doing their thing. They're just getting less and less each year. So, okay.
And it's a challenge for them too, of being able to find housing stock, because they're sort of like Habitat for Humanity, where they obtain houses that need to be fixed, fix them up, and then get home buyers into them. And they're having a really hard time purchasing properties these days.
I bet that was that kind of leads me to my next question. Less funding, but the home prices higher and higher. Another thing I wanted to just ask about was I saw blight mentioned a couple of times in this document. I think that's probably something that that applies to a lot of different areas, and just kind of like a standard term. Like maybe there are areas with extreme blight, and that these funds are used to help that. But we don't really have a plan to address any blight in our city using CDBG funds, do we?
We have some designated, when we had designated sources of spending the funding downtown at that time, the city council also designated the downtown as a blight zone to help target the funding.
Okay, all right. So we don't have that kind of mechanism in place for this.
We don't have a targeted approach at this time.
Okay, thank you. That's all. I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, and we'll look forward to having the public hearing. So, all right. So next, we're going to move on to item 3, Public Works Agreement with Brumfield Construction Incorporated for CW4 Breach Mitigation Project. Managing Engineer Bill Davis is here to present. Take it away, sir.
Good evening, Burlington City Council. I'm here to discuss a contract for removing non-native material, including manholes, exposed piping, creosote piling, and rubble from the beach at the end of Ohio Avenue. It extends about 1,000 feet to the west and about 1,000 feet to the east, going towards the Warren Avenue Bridge. The work is mitigation and being done in the digging up and removing a decommissioned sewer main it's been buried in DNR tidelands. So the main was decommissioned during a pump station upgrade in 2020. The city has performed similar mitigation on past projects at the request of DNR and Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. So in lieu of removing the sewer main, which can be very destructive to the beach and it's costly, so instead of doing that costly destructive thing with the beach environment, we leave the main in place and we perform mitigation to clean up the beach. So in this case, we executed an agreement with DNR. It was executed back in 2021 to perform this mitigation and leave the sewer main in place. So using a small works roster, we received proposals from 6 contractors to perform the work and selected Brumfield Construction because they were the lowest cost proposal. Thank you.
All right. Any questions or comments on?
Just wanted to, pardon me, just wanted to tell all of you that I assailed Mr. Davis with a billion questions. And this is a project that comes really at the behest of DNR and Fish and Wildlife. And so just kudos to Mr. Davis, and here's another one of these projects. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? How would we like to treat this? Is consent okay? I'm seeing plenty of north south, as I say. So consent it is. Thanks. Thanks, Bill, for your presentation. Up next, wastewater manager Eric Burris is here to present the next two items. The first item is goods and services agreement with Rainier Pump Systems Incorporated for the purchase of two low flow Sulzer sewage pumps and associated parts for lift station CE1.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So lift station CE1 has two low flow pumps that need to be replaced. The Sulzer pumps, we were looking to purchase or being sole source because there will be no needed modifications to the existing piping, etc., to accommodate a different brand of pump. This in turn is going to eliminate added costs associated with extra materials and labor. Staff received a quote from Rainier Pump Systems for two new pumps, polymer coating of internal pieces, and spare parts in the amount of $138,157.66, including shipping and applicable sales tax. That is all I have on that one.
Okay, any questions or comments on this?
Just a really quick question, Mr. Burris. These obviously need to be replaced. Was the asset manager needed to determine this need, or were people operating the equipment?
People that maintain the equipment, we're having to rebuild these pumps every year or two, and it's taking up a lot of time, not to mention the fact that parts are no longer available for this. So I will say in the future, an asset manager is probably going to be pretty helpful with this kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. I would ask you more about that if we were not so far behind time. May I email you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
All right. Eric, Eric Burris, how many pumps do you have?
Total?
Yeah.
Oh, dear Lord.
All right.
I'd have to get back with you on that.
Give me a ballpark. Give me a ballpark.
I'll say 160.
Yeah, wow, awesome. Anyways, if we ever get this public works tour happening for especially new members, there's so much fascinating stuff that we do. I'm so impressed with our infrastructure, but and the dam's amazing, but wastewater treatment is really pretty distinctly impressive, as we might say. If you've got a little penny, Mayor Wheeler.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know if we've introduced the new asset manager to you yet.
I don't think so. I'm sure they got their hands full.
Yes, and that'll be a question, that's the, one of the things behind that position is that person will have that data at their fingertips. And we gotta get him in to meet you. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Council President.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, Anna, do you have something else?
Yeah, really quick. I'm just filled with admiration that we have an asset manager. I'm very strong on oversight and maintenance. So just saying that. Thanks.
All right, how would we like to treat this first one? Is consent good?
Yes.
All right, consent it is. And then the next one is the purchase of two variable frequency drives and associated parts from North Coast Electric Company for the lift station CE1.
Right, so kind of the same thing here, variable frequency drives for the low flow pumps at C1. They need replaced. They're at the end of their lifespan. We cannot get parts for them anymore. Staff received a quote from North Coast Electric Company for two new VFDs and associated parts for the sum of $58,347.88, including shipping and applicable sales tax. Pretty cut and dry. Any questions?
All right. City Attorney Kylie Fennell.
I just want to draw council's attention to a change that happened in the packet, depending on when you downloaded it. The original packet materials included our standard agreement, and we weren't able to negotiate those specific terms with North Coast. We were able to negotiate essentially a venue if there was a dispute, but their terms of service and terms of agreement are uploaded in the packet now, if you look at it. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. After consulting with Mr. Burrs, our staff has determined that, well, it's not the terms that we prefer. It's something that we're willing to go forward with. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention in case you downloaded the packet earlier.
Okay, thank you. Okay, how would we like to treat this? Consent? Consent it is. All right. Up next, professional services agreement with the Robinson Noble Incorporated for hydrogeological oversight for well drilling, wells 7R and 9R. Our water utility manager, Cammie Applebeck, is here to present. The floor is yours.
Thank you, President Goodnow. Good evening, Council. This agreement before you provides hydrogeological oversight of the drilling and construction of 2 production wells to replace existing wells now out of operation. In 2021, well 7 suddenly and dramatically lost efficiency, which was determined to be unrecoverable, and the well was taken out of service. Well 7 is an important deep aquifer well in the Anderson Creek well field. The well field provides approximately 20% of overall production on average and serves as a critical backup when the surface water system is shut down. Well 9, which collapsed and was taken out of service in 2010, is one of only 3 wells serving East Bremerton. Not only is the replacement urgently needed to meet high summertime demands without exhausting the remaining 2 wells, but replacement must be completed before the end of the year in order to meet a water rights preliminary permit deadline. Well design and construction is a complicated process that requires a team of consultants and contractors, a hydrogeologist and engineer to site and design the well and provide oversight of the construction and testing, a construction contractor to prepare the drilling site for access, utilities, and work areas, and a well driller to drill the well. This agreement before you is to secure the hydrogeologist. Engineering will be bringing forward agreements in the near future to secure the remaining services. This contract is a total of $180,000, and this has been budgeted in the water utility capital budget, so no budget additions or changes are required. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, how would you like to treat this?
Consent.
Consent it is. Cammie, thanks so much.
Thank you.
It's all right, great. Well, that goes to our end of our agenda bill items. So now we go on to general council business. I would like to invite REACT Chair Queen Kennedy to provide a summary of the highlights from the last meeting REACT held on June.
Thank you, President Goodnow. Some highlights from the last REACT. Thanks to Councilor Member Mockler. We had an interview with one of the candidates. So we are in the process of assessing and we'll have an executive session the next meeting for REACT in order to possibly bring that member on. So right now we have 4 community members. This would be our 5th, and we have room for 7. So we still are looking for 2 other members from the community to join REACT. And again, as Councilor Mockler kind of put forward, we're really looking for people who are community leaders in BIPOC spaces. So if you do know anybody that would be interested in serving on the council, or I'm sorry, on the committee, that would be excellent to point them to the website. There's an application on the website, and it's linked at the REACT page. And please also direct them either to myself or Vice President Chamberlain or Councilor Mockler with any questions that we can answer. We're happy to grab coffee or whatever to let them know what our committee has been up to. Also, a huge shout out to Vice President Chamberlain for getting a table together for Juneteenth. It was Councilor Mockler and Vice President Chamberlain that set up in the morning. I joined later, so I really want to give huge props and shout out to them for we're bringing in a tent and table and flyers and lots of information. It was great. We saw the mayor, we saw a lot of community members, and we got some input. So just really great to see a large amount of community celebrating the now federally recognized Juneteenth that is long overdue being recognized, and is really great to be in community with that. Go ahead, Vice President Chamberlain. I saw you have a hand up. I'll cede the floor to you.
I don't think that city council does many tabling events, and so I want to throw a huge shout out to Christine, our assistant there, who put together the flyers and the paperwork for us.
Awesome. Yes, Christine has been absolutely instrumental in the transition of 3 very new members onto the REACT committee and helping support, and it would be a disaster without her. So huge shout out to that. In the next meeting, we have invited the attorney Fennell to come join us. We're going to be looking at how to, as our council will say, strengthen REACT, make sure that it's more institutionalized. And then we're, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councilor Mockler, I see your hand up as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that next year, when we have all of the councilors present, we will be able to summon a sufficient magic to keep the rain from falling. So we really apologize for that this year.
That's a good point. Yeah, we did run into some weather at the end. But if you haven't been to the Juneteenth, it was wonderful. Great food, excellent speakers and artists. And the 3 of us went home with probably a total of, I don't know, 10 fruit trees between the 3 of us. So that was also very nice. So just shout out to everybody who was involved in that. Thanks so much.
All right, great. Next, I'd like to invite Public Work Committee Chair Eric Younger to provide a summary of the highlights from their last meeting held on June 21st.
Okay, thank you. As you just mentioned, we had the meeting yesterday, so this better be fresh in my memory. I got 2 other council members that can quickly correct me. About half the items that we discussed last night were on the study session agenda for tonight. Other highlights include the ESCO process for capital delivery, which is for the East Side Treatment Plant. So if you're unfamiliar with the term, basically it's a process that's run through the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services in a private company, in this case, Train. That may be familiar to some people because Public Works has used this process 3 times before. Basically, it's a design build. So there's some equipment at the East Side Treatment Plant that are at the end of its lifespan, and this allows the trained engineers to come in and basically do a lot of the design and also guarantee energy safety. So the city has used Train before and has had excellent results with it, and this is a streamlined process. It allows us to get this work done without hiring additional engineers in-house, and the council will hear more about that in a future study session. The other items include Helix Design Group, and that's going to be for approximately $50,000 interior remodel design for the Oyster Bay Works facility. That'll be on the next study session schedule. And then some updates on the contract bid award and amendments for the East 11th and Perry Avenue project, which hopefully the shovel will be hitting the ground, so to speak, pretty soon on that stuff. Then 2 last items. Director Nucky gave us an update on Public Works stewardship projects in response to our city council retreat, where the topic of environmental stewardship came up, and Tom gave us a long list of all the things that Public Works is doing just to make us aware of what we already have going on and sharing that with us. 2 other items. One was, you'll see this coming, a 3-year chip seal unit price contract, which will streamline chip seal services on a year basis. Basically allow us to, the city, to have one contractor for chip seal, and then the city can just say, hey, I want this road done, I want this road done, and they can go at it without doing all this cumbersome bid process over and over again. So that was pretty good to hear. And then lastly, Councilmember Coughlin gave us a presentation on a bike trip that he went with the West Sound Cycling Club over to Seattle, about a 30-mile route, and gave us some examples, some really good examples. We all hear about 8-foot lanes, 10-foot lanes, 12-foot lanes, 14-foot lanes, but he gave us some real-world pictures and just kind of relayed what this really feels like and other traffic calming measures. And I enjoyed the presentation. I think Councilmember Mark Porter did too. And that wraps up the Public Works meeting. Anna.
Thank you. Just to add, because I said it in Public Works, so I'm saying it again here, that the list of stewardship accomplishments and projected projects that Director Nucky presented were all concrete, and without knowing the details of every single project, many of them are mandated by federal and state law. Fish passage culverts, there we go, and so forth. So just, making my plug one more time, I think these are all really good things. We could do more. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else or anything for the good of the order? Jeff.
Just real quick, wanted to, I think still got the open member position on the audit committee, so keep putting out flyers and notices, but keep spreading the word, still open.
Great, thank you, Denise.
Yeah, down here in Vancouver, I just wanted to let everybody know I'm going to bring back tons of new ideas. I know that staff are probably going, no. Honestly, I'm not going to be bringing, I don't think, new ideas, but maybe fresh ways of looking at things that are happening around the state, including AmeriCorps workers now to be fellows around climate resiliency coming to the state of Washington later this summer. So lots of great information down here being shared, and going to be bringing that back, and of course making it accessible to all of council and anybody else that wants to hear about it. So lots of public-private partnership work going on with development, which of course is what we're looking at in Bremerton, and just getting really excited. And for those of you who don't know, I am bringing a pair of socks back for Councilman Younger, who could not join me. So I was the flag bearer and everything all by myself, but I'm bringing him back socks, and I promised President Goodnow that perhaps I'll do the same for him. So get your orders in now. Thank you.
All right, Anna.
Thanks, Michael. Just while we were doing these committee reports, Jeff was talking about getting more connection between the Public Works Committee, Complete Streets, and the ADA. Do I have that right, Jeff? So I was thinking if perhaps those committees were to make an equally brief presentation to the Public Works Committee, these presentations have all been brief, that there'd be more connectedness and less, what's the term of art they use now? Siloing. So just checking that. Denise, thank you for acquiring swag. We all want swag. And then just finally, you guys will all get an email when we get out of this meeting that I've requested a 5-minute presentation for our next study session. And at the end of the presentation, you can say yes, no, or we want more information. So just giving you all a heads up while we're here. Thank you all.
All right, just a little update on, Mayor Wheeler.
Yeah, just really quickly, when the council, any of you bring up a comment that we should do more, I want to make sure that I'm not going to, we're misunderstanding as a administration what you mean. right now, everything's based on employees, how many people we have, and to do these projects. Not every jurisdiction is bullish or leans in as much as we do on environmental projects. If there's more you want done, then it comes down to funding. It comes down to funding for the actual physical construction or removal of a fish barrier, passive repair of a culvert, and it comes to the people who will perform that, engineers and technicians. Those are paid for out of your utility rates. Okay, just almost 100%. So just so you know that when we have this conversation, which could do more, this is actually the billing statements each of our customers get. This is where it shows up. This is how we pay for a lot of that work. So want to make sure we're all on the same page. Everything's doable and it should be discussed, but it's the money's got to come from somewhere also. I still think we do a pretty good job for what we collect from our citizens.
I'm just going to say, since I think this is to me, that was why I said that these were all really good projects, but they are all concrete projects. And so what I am hoping for is honest to gosh, Mayor, nothing more than a discussion of more things. I do not expect that money trees are going to sprout in Bremerton anytime soon. I know that money is finite, resources are finite. I get that. Honest to gosh, Scouts honor.
We're here to try to get things done, Councilor. And if you're when the comments and Councilor, when that comes up, I'm listening, and I want to make sure that I fully understand what you're asking and what your comment actually means. So I just want to make sure, and so I would welcome a roundtable, and if the council is interested in expanding, there's a lot that goes to it. There's quite a bit actually on the programs that we do.
All right, thank you. I just was going to also update folks that you should see the final goals and priorities imminently. We'll get them finished during this meeting. So Jennifer and I met last night and went over them. Just some wordsmithing, just some, almost sort of related to what the mayor is just bringing out, making sure that we're understanding where our lane is and staying in our lane a little bit. And then if we have something for administration that we're saying that we support them or encourage them or, but I thought Jennifer and I, we spent about an hour and a half, I think, on it last night. And I just sent it to you, Jennifer, after I took a quick look at it. But Jennifer is much better with grammar than I am. So I will just let you take a look at it and get it to me, and then we'll get it out to everybody. If somebody spots something that's just, you can't live with, but I think we did really good work, and I'm really happy with the finished product. I think Jennifer is too. So, okay, well, there is no council meeting next week on June 29th. Is this your first Wednesday off, folks, or is this our second maybe? I don't remember if you took advantage of the last Wednesday. You get 4 a year that sometimes you don't get to come in on a Wednesday. I'm sorry, I get kind of excited. Our next regularly scheduled council meeting and all council meetings will be held remotely, including the next council meeting on Wednesday, July 6th at 5:30 p.m. Looking forward to the Bremerton Bridge Blast this Saturday. I wish everyone a fun but safe 4th of July holiday. This meeting is adjourned. Oh, actually, I'll just look at the chat. Okay.
Thank you everyone for who attends and who presents.
All right. That is the council meeting for the week. As they have said, there is no council meeting next week. So I will wait for my co-host to come on, Mr. Jeff Campbell. You saw him typing in the chat there. Very interesting. definitely have some questions. Wish we could have had ask some questions there. Jeff, your camera is not active there. Uh, that would have been nice. Let's see if I can bring Jeff on. Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Hold on, I gotta do this over again.
No worries.
Sorry.
All right. So Jeff is coming on. Typically what happens is when you're watching the Zoom and you're trying to get on the Zoom, the computer doesn't know what camera what to access. So we'll jump in just a minute. Those meetings are pretty long, right? 5 to 7. That's a 2-hour meeting. And I think that can be a deterrent for many of us to participate and see what's going on, see how decisions are made, either for or against us, for sure.
So I can hear.
All right. Jeff is trying to come back in. His camera's still not connecting there. Jeff, hit that gear button there and see if you can switch to that camera. Otherwise, you might need to restart your computer, unfortunately. So, definitely concerned about the parking situation. I'll tell you a story. Matter of fact, let me show you a story. So last what was that? Thursday, I'm at the Roxy Theater. Literally unloading, and as you know, I just had back surgery the previous Friday. So I'm in a loading zone, and my vehicle actually has disabled plates. So not a sign, actual plates. And I received a ticket for, oh, what do they say? Not actively loading. So apparently I didn't get back out of the Roxy fast enough. And if you've been into a movie theater, if you walk into the building and if you're carrying something and you go all the way into where the theater seats are and you come back out, well, that wasn't fast enough for them. So we have been penalized heavily since our building has been downtown. Just absolutely ridiculous and frustrating. Matter of fact, our building is on 5th and Park, and our vehicles are logoed, right? Our building is logoed, and still somehow we seem to get tickets. Although we are a business conducting business in the downtown corridor. And we've had numerous conversations with either Diamond Parking or who is the city parking down there. And it's, oh, there's nothing we can do. And they just come up with all these really great reasons on why they need to ticket the vehicles, which is tremendously frustrating, to be sure. So, it makes me a little concerned when I see, priority being pushed toward folks that are coming from the outside. And what's being said is, oh, well, people aren't living in Kitsap because, well, they can't afford to live here. So they're living somewhere else and then they're commuting in. It's like, okay, well, sure, we are not the cheapest place, but you have all these residents that currently live here that are having issues, and we don't really seem like the priority. And then I also wonder, what is the percentage of people who work in the shipyard actually live in the county? Okay, how much outsourcing are they doing? So that is there you go. So did you have you're muted now? You got a camera and no voice. Before you had you were the disembodied voice. I feel like Jeff is gonna speak French here in a minute. As soon as he gets a chance. But those are stats that I would like to know. I'm very interested in those statistics there. I'm also quite surprised at how much this study was. $750,000 for a study? No, I still don't hear you. $750,000 for a study, and then it was like, oh well, there was a grant that paid for 600 and something thousand of it. It's like, but you still paid like 100 grand for this study. Oh, and it sounded
Check.
like it was a study. There you go.
All right.
All right, how you doing there?
Had to go to the settings. All right. So sorry.
No, no worries. I was just saying,
It's like,
that
Jeff, you had one job, man. Log in.
how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I was listening to your ticketing woes, and that's funny because the council members kept saying, "Oh, we need to crack down on and give more tickets and stuff," and it sounds like they're doing pretty well at it.
Yeah, they're keeping the doors open through G2 alone. Let me tell you,
Ouch.
it's ridiculous.
Man.
It's ridiculous. Um, so what I was saying was, did I hear correctly? This study was $750,000.
The transportation study?
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed how much it is. But that whole conversation was kind of interesting because it was like it was obviously pushing for the livability. It was like they were saying livability, and they'd trumpets would sound, and they'd say, and then they'd say or capacity building.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, are they getting this? I think it's, and I'm totally on board with that too. I'm totally on board with, just make it uncomfortable for cars, and you'll get rid of the cars, and but or I don't know. I don't know what the balance is. I mean, if you live here, or for small businesses, but certainly as being a parking lot for the Navy, there's got to be a better way. It seems to me. I don't know.
Well, one of those ways may be, for vehicles that are in Kitsap County, maybe they get a special sticker that's on their vehicle so it's quickly identifiable. How do we get some of that study money? I don't know, Rob. I would take half of that money, right? Yeah, maybe a special sticker, but saying, hey, you know what? Let's put some parking meters downtown. We'll make everyone pay. What a great revenue generator, and the traffic lights and everything else, and just find different ways to tax us even more.
Yeah.
I'm a
I
little
mean,
concerned
I
about that.
personally, I hate cars. I hate getting in my car. I just like, I would walk everywhere if I could, unless I'm driving cross country. Like I'll go on vacation. That's my friends say, oh, you think cross country is just next door or something about that. So I'll drive long distances, but otherwise I just like to just walk. I don't like dealing with traffic. I don't like, and this Warren is just solid traffic. It's like a freeway, like all the time. And that can't be healthy, right?
Well, no, but then trying to force behavior. I mean, it seems like for the commuters that are coming in, it's like, oh, let's do all these things for the commuters. Like, well, so what incentives do you have for the people that actually live here?
Right.
If you want to force them to actually change their lifestyle and not use their vehicles, or um, maybe use bicycles, and that's why I put that in the chat. It's like, how many residents ride bikes, or is it just a certain demographic of people that ride bikes?
That's
So
it.
it's like,
Yeah. I
and they're
have
so
a
excited,
bike.
like, oh, these bike paths are just wonderful and awesome. And it's like, I think about myself. I just started walking at the park recently, and I've been here since '97. So it's like, I didn't care about the parks and the money that's been pushed into these parks until um, now, and even still, I don't know how much I actually care about that as far as a priority. Would I rather see parks upkept, or would I rather see, homelessness solved, or the money go there? I think of these big sprawling golf courses, and it's like, we need acreage so I can hit this ball across and into this hole. But we could build all this property, all this housing here, but not here. We got to have our golf there. So, you uh, sorry, golfers. Just how I feel about that.
And so the Bremerton has a golf course. Did you know we own a golf course?
Which one?
I don't know. I'm not a golfer, but I know they keep talking about city council, and it's I don't know, but it just got to me. It raises that same issue of
Mhm.
choices. Like, okay, we're choosing to have again support a golf course or the convention center, which also loses money. I think they both. I don't know for sure, but it's
Well,
a
if
choice.
it's the golf course on McWilliams, I mean, they could probably put 1,000 units on that sprawling course there if it's that. Just saying, and that's, an apartment complex, let alone tiny homes, but, yeah, just saying, gonna have to find some different ways to solve these issues. So so
Along those lines,
yeah.
I hope that they open up the budget process more because that's where you should hear about this is during the budget process. And I feel like that has not been very transparent in the past, or at least I've tried and not been able to follow. It seems like it's done mostly behind closed doors, and then the last 2 weeks, here it is, up or down vote. But I'd like to hear more about what goes into that. And part of it is I'm sure me not looking up all of it. And there is so much to try to keep track of, like the CDBG, I don't know, the punk rock whatever. Dating myself. Was that CD? Anyways,
CDBG, I believe, community
yeah.
block grant.
Yeah. And I don't know anything about that. And so I'm curious about that. Like, are we applying for everything that we could be applying for? What is it? Okay, I'm curious now about it really because when they said, "Oh yeah, there's public comment in there," but nobody does it. Don't even worry about the public comment. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
put public comment in there for some reason,
Mhm.
probably. Um, so now I really want to look and see what look into it. But yeah, so that's it was kind. Other than that, it was kind of a slow chamber or city
Yeah,
council.
last 2 weeks have been pretty slow. Looking for them to really get cooking. I think that's one of the things is that you have to be diligent and continue to attend because as soon as you miss it, that's when a whole bunch of stuff is pushed through and you're like, "What the hell just happened?"
Yeah, yeah.
So, it can be a little dry, but you have to be there to know what's happening and make your voice heard when it's applicable for sure.
And I thought that transportation study, I thought that was a good presentation and really kind of laid things out in terms of the choice of, like they were saying, really livability versus, just building more parking lots and just more roads, more parking lots. That is definitely a choice. So it'd be interesting to see how this informs decisions going forward. How fast are they willing to move down that road and how aggressively? I think it'd be interesting to see. Like, are we
Well,
gonna
this
just,
was a
well, we'll build a
50-year.
few parking lots for a few years, and then we'll put in a couple of these bike lanes, see how those bike lanes go. Right? Which I don't know. I guess you got to start somewhere, but and I'm not a
Well, this is
transportation
projected out
person.
to 2050, correct?
Yeah, that was that. Yeah, that's stretching things out a bit.
So tell me, Jeff, I missed the part where they were talking about option 3, which no one liked, which was the Navy building parking on their own property. What was the downer on that? Do you remember?
Oh well, I mean, my understanding of it is so they're talking about building a 16-story parking structure on the edge of the 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 naval shipyard there. Um, the problem with that is you've still got all those cars converging on the same area, so you've still got the same traffic. It's just that they're stopping a few blocks, whatever south or whatever direction that is. Um, s- I think that was number three.
But
And
does that unclog downtown?
yeah, I don't know.
And then you want a growth model too, right? I mean, I would assume the Navy still wants carriers to come in, multiple carriers to be in dry dock, subs to be in dry dock. So, they're going to want to have some growth and have more employees. So at some point, that capacity is gonna or demand is gonna grow one way or another.
Yeah, and that opens up a whole nother can of worms, right? With the federal government and like, is the federal government paying their fair share in Bremerton and in Kitsap County? I haven't seen an honest accounting today yet. Like there's these things called PILT funds, the payments in lieu of taxes. So like in the District of Columbia, it's pretty, there's different parts of the countries where most of your viable taxable land is government, right? And so they have a payment system to account for that. Okay, we're going to get so many dollars. And the thing is, I cannot find anything about PILT payments for our county. Payment in lieu of tax fund, yeah. Um, and I have I can find the link to it, but essentially, so I've found where Representative Kilmer has listed out. Oh, there's all these PILT funds or payment whatever they funds that are going to like Pierce County, not every county except for Kitsap. I'm
Mhm.
like, if anybody should be getting it, should be Kitsap because half of our most prized land is eaten up by government, and people say, well, yeah, but it's such a benefit to the area, and I don't know. I would really like to see once you start weighing in the environmental factors. I mean, they're working with nuclear stuff over there. The risk factor, you factor in the risk factor, the environmental factor, the traffic factor that we're dealing with. Are they really paying their fair share? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it from a Bremertonian's standpoint, viewpoint.
Right. And if there's a world, if there's a nuclear war, we're one of the first targets, right? So, I
Right.
mean, there's that too.
Yeah, we should get something for that.
I'm just saying.
But these are questions for Derek Kilmer. If anybody sees Derek Kilmer, they can ask.
You know what? I think that's a good questions, because we have all these questions on where the funds go, how do you access funds, where are these other pockets of money, and no one can seem to provide, the answers to this. I mean, and that's the whole thing with transparency, right? So if these funds are out there, how do we get access to them, or why are we not going for them? And then how do we start going after those funds, and what's the intention on using those funds?
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal. So now, did you have your presentation ready this evening?
I don't know. I don't know if I can figure out how to pull it up. Hold on. How do I? You showed me it. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, you see the little square with the.
Yeah, oh, and just a little caveat. I work better with an editor. I'm not the best at presentation making when it's just me. I'm like, that's good enough.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
But yes, it was fun. I was digging into so this is all right. Did I click that yet? Share screen.
And then you're just gonna pick which screen you want to share. I don't know how many screens you have. I have 5 screens. So did you guys, while Jeff is pulling that up, is there anything that kind of pricked you in regards to what you heard this evening? Like I said, a little concerned. I thought I heard that this study was 750,000. I also thought that I heard that there was a study in 2017. So how often are we paying for these studies? So that's another concern that I have. All right. All right, Jeff has his.
You can see that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm getting an echo. Why am I getting an echo? I wonder if I...
Yeah, whatever you turned on, now you're coming in through my headset and not out of my main speaker. So that was interesting. And now you muted yourself. All right, so Jeff just X'd out all kinds of stuff. His presentation's up, his camera's gone. So we'll let him get that going. But yeah, type in the chat if there was something that interested you or you want further information on. One of the things that we intend to do, at least I intend to do, is if you have questions, I intend to forward those to the council people and or to the mayor. This morning I had breakfast downtown at an event for Kitsap Strong, and I was actually sitting next to Anna Mockler. So I'll be reaching out to her and requesting that she come on. She said that she would come on to the conduit. So she is city council for District 6. So stay tuned for that. And of course, we missed our interview with Jennifer Chamberlain a few weeks ago. She was supposed to come on about 3 Sundays ago. Saw her at Juneteenth. And so she said to reach back out to her. So you should see her come back on shortly also. And I will continue to reach out to the council people. Earlier today, we had 2 folks that came on to the podcast, and they are both running for commissioner. And then I've also got a message from one person, a third candidate, that we're waiting to see what their situation is. And then a third one reached out to me while we were live and asked to come on to the podcast. So stay tuned for that. The 2 that came on today, I believe that is Jeff and Naomi. They both will be coming back on. So stay tuned for that. So, all right, I can hear you, Jeff.
Hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Just can't see you.
Can't see me. Okay. I'm afraid if I share my screen here, let me give you the.
You want to send me the presentation? I can put it up on my side.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Nice. That's right. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Do you
There
have
you
any
go.
idea what that even means?
I don't.
It's like we have all these weird sayings, and it's like, what does that even mean?
I know. Well, some of them, I come back and I'm like, yeah, you don't say that one anymore. And I'm like, okay.
Well, you want to turn the camera back on?
I'm trying, but it looks like I'm not sure what happened.
You're just having all kinds of fun tonight, right?
I am having trouble here, yeah. That's it. Oh, there it is. Okay.
There he goes.
And you can hear me still?
Yep. Yeah, you're coming through loud and clear there.
All right.
And go into slideshow mode there. And bam. Just like that. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Nice. Okay, so originally I had the title Distribution of Power, and I thought, oh, people are going to think this is about electricity. So I changed the title. But, so yeah, I guess I'll let you go ahead and flip through this.
All right. Go ahead and do that.
If you can. It'll work. Okay. So the first question, well, what is political power? And I realized quickly, you can go to the next slide, that's a topic for a whole semester of political science discussions and political philosophy. And but essentially, right, it's the ability of this, we're granting collective power. Collectively, we're granting power to the state to enforce laws, right? Or to redistribute money, to tax and spend. But I'm not going to get too far into this. I'm not happy with my 2 quick definitions here, but what we'll do now is we'll focus on political power as defined by the city charter, which is a lot easier to talk about.
All right.
Although, yeah. So, okay, the next slide is, okay, so in terms of just the flow of political power in the country, so the the Constitution overrides everything, right? And then below that is the state constitution and the Code of Washington. And then kind of below that, which has to, and not really hierarchically, but well, in terms of, I guess it is hierarchically here. So the Bremerton City Charter then kind of the Bremerton City Council Charter and its municipal code, they have to conform to the state Code of Washington, which then has to conform to the Constitution. So that's kind of putting the overall art on the city charter, which is the next slide.
You know what I love there as I'm getting ready to forward to the next slide, that you put the links where people can get information. So I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. And this is kind of that first page, just to show you a splash screen of where you can go and look at the municipal code. And the municipal code is where you'll find all the laws for I don't know, everything from pets to now they're working. Well, it's no noise ordinance. They're working on a noise ordinance, but things like that. So there's the laws. But if you go to the next slide, what we're really focusing on now is really who has the power to make decisions? How are decisions made at the city level? And we come from a tradition, a belief in checks and balances, right? That you don't give all the power to one person, or you try not to. So you have the executive putting a check on the legislature, putting a check on the judicial, etc. But in general, the legislature is always considered the closest to the people, so it's considered the dominant voice. And so the legislature makes the laws. They determine the laws. They set the amount of money that's going to be spent on things. That's the legislature's role in just about I think every level of government. Then the executive branch is really to enact those laws, to carry those laws out. And then the judicial branch is there to make sure that you're not stepping over the lines of what is constitutionally allowed, right? You're not stepping on someone's recognized right. I don't like when people say the government gives people rights, because in my mind, the government just takes away rights. So in other words, if we have the freedom or ability to do anything we want, but collectively we agree to say, we'll give up our right to kill anybody at any time, right? We'll agree to give up that ability, that whatever. So this is my kind of interpretation. Again, going back into the political science side, which I won't go too far beyond. But,
Jeff, that's a hell of an example of a right that we choose to give up collectively.
Yeah, I've tried. So this is why I haven't taught in a while. So I don't have good examples. Right? Yeah, but I mean, it's I don't know. People say, "Oh, well, we want the right to do X."
Mm-hmm.
You have the right to do X. It's just that the government says no, so they're taking away your right. I don't know. It's a semantic game, probably, but I would love to maybe on a different show we could talk about that rights. I would love to talk about rights.
So let me ask you this: under the legislature, who are some of those local names, so we can kind of put a face to the diagram here?
Yeah, well, locally, our legislature. Well, and this is really looking at the national level. So, so that's there will be Derek Kilmer is our representative here.
Okay.
And then we have our two senators, who the state chairs. But it's really the Representative Kilmer is really, the House, if they wanted to, could really be the power behind the federal government, because again, the power really does flow down to the lowest branch of government in things. But it's getting that collective voice to do something. But anyway, but on to the next, not to belabor that point too much. So at the city level, it's really more simplified. So you really have, again, the legislature, which is supposed to set the direction, assign all the funds, write the laws, set the directions for the city, overall direction for the city, and really provide oversight of the management of the city. And then the executive branch is the mayor. And the mayor is there to enact the laws, to carry out the wishes of the legislature. Again, who are most closely tied to the people of the community. And then again, the judicial is again, you can't step over, judicial bounds in terms of our state constitution or our national constitution. But you don't have a local judicial. Well, I'm not going to get too far in the judicial. I'm not a lawyer. I'm sure I'm not. This would be a good topic for a lawyer to come and talk about how the law, the judicial branch kind of affects both of these branches.
Well, let me ask you questions, and if you can't answer them, maybe we can kind of seek out those answers. But you hear things like right now, Texas wants to secede from the United States. So you hear states' rights versus national rights. So how do states have their own rights that might be counter to federal law, or is it not counter to federal law? Sometimes it goes above, what the federal law says. Okay, you can have 10 cats, that's the cap, or that's the floor. But state law says you can have 25 cats, and so that's okay. But federally, it's like, hey, we set it at 10, but if you want to go above, you can. You just can't go under, or maybe vice versa. So how does that work? States' rights versus federal rights.
Yeah, I don't know if I can cover that in this session, just because I think I don't know where to even start with that one, because in terms of that throws me for loop. Let me get back to that one.
Okay.
Let me come back to that one. The overall, yeah, let's come back to that. Let me just focus on Bremerton. Let me focus on Bremerton for right now.
Go ahead.
Let's leave. Okay. Next one.
Go next slide. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So Article 1 is kind of the basic part of the. So this is part of the the city council charter, and so this is where you're setting out. Okay, this is going to be the name of the city. These are going to be the specific boundaries, and then these are the powers. And I've left out the boundaries and names part and really looked into what are the rights and powers. And then there's also a whole definition of what different terms and things. One of the things to note here is that we are a first-class city, which means that we can sue and be sued by all courts and proceedings. We can use a corporate seal. We can by and through our legislative body, which is the city council. They can contract. They can write contracts. They can, and this is the key to me. The key to when it comes to housing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The city council, through the city council, the city of Bremerton may purchase, lease, receive, or otherwise acquire real and personal property of every kind and use, enjoy, hold, lease, control, convey, or otherwise dispose of it for the common benefit. That's pretty broad, right?
It is, and enjoy is such a weird word there.
Where?
Enjoy. To use, enjoy, hold.
Yeah.
Like enjoy? Like, okay.
And then, okay, so in other words, when people say, oh, well, what power does the city council really have? That's quite a bit of power.
That is quite a bit of power.
But collectively, I mean, it makes sense, right? So collectively as a community, we're saying that all of the property basically in Bremerton is for the benefit of us all collectively, whatever's best for us collectively, which I know I don't know if anybody's going to even hear this, but I'm sure those people would be pushed back with that interpretation. But anyway, so then how is the exercise? How is that power exercised? It's exercised through a mayor who shall be the chief executive, the city council, which should serve as the legislative body, and again, bring it down to the even lowest level, subject to the control and direction of the people at all times by means of initiative, referendum, and recall, as provided details, obviously.
Is this what you were talking about last week, where you were saying that there was a provision if we had 2,000 signatures, they would need to act?
Right, exactly. So,
Wow.
and this is, yeah, if you go to the, go to the next slide. I think I go into that a little bit more. Or that's okay. Go back up. Sorry. Let's cover that now. So initiative means that you propose a law. So the citizens, with us, and I think it's like 30 or 40% of whoever voted in the last mayoral election. And so it's a reasonable number, right? And the whole thought being that there's always an outlet for the people to say, all right, we want this to happen, and to override the elect. So anyways, the initiative is proposing a new law. The referendum is saying, we don't like the law that's on the books right now. And then the recall is if you want to recall, you want to get somebody out of office. You're like, this person has got to go for whatever reason.
So Jeff, let me ask you a question. Looking at this hierarchy here, right? May purchase, lease, receive, or otherwise acquire real and personal property of every kind. It almost seems like the city could solve the homelessness issue through purchase, or saying, hey, these abandoned businesses, you're not doing anything with them. We're going to go and eminent domain, or whatever the terminology is called, and we're going to, transfer these buildings into, another owner, or the city's going to take control over it. They're going to renovate them or demolish them and rebuild and house our homeless. Is that, am I interpreting that correctly?
That's my interpretation. Yeah. And so okay. So if you go to the next page,
Mm-hmm.
I think, okay, this is more about their job. This is, again, showing how much power the city council really does have.
Fascinating.
They may define city jobs and functions and set the pay level for all those every position. So they can define, if they want to, they can define every job that's in the city, which kind of goes against. It goes counterintuitive of what I think people think, or what I would have thought, right? That was the mayor's complete prerogative. But and then the other thing is, so to pass laws and ordinances. Okay, this is where you get into where the political power hits the road, right? And set penalties up to and including depriving someone of their liberty, jailing them, and the confiscation of their property, so fines. So as city council, you have the ability to decide when people will be denied, have their liberty taken, when they will be locked up, and that's pretty big. There's not many bigger powers than that, in my mind. And then so the power to enforce laws by locking people up, and also to enforce laws by taking away property, fines and such. Council should have all legislative powers possible for a city or town to have under the Constitution of this state, by way of illustration. I like this. By way of illustration, and not in limitation, this is what the city can do. Such powers may be exercised in regard to acquisition, sale, ownership, improvement, maintenance, protection, restoration, regulation, use, leasing, disposition, vacation, abandon, and beautification of real property again. Of public ways, real property of any kind, waterways, structures, or any other improvement or use of real property, personal property. And then for what purpose can they do all that? Such powers may be exercised in regard to all aspects of collective bargaining and the rendering of social, cultural, recreational, educational, government, or corporate services, including operating and supplying of utilities, municipal services. In addition, and not limitation, where was the interesting? Have authority given to. Anyways, they have very wide latitude.
Yeah, I mean, in a dystopian future, it sounds like they could take your property and put a golf course on it because, well, it's in their power to do so. Is that how I'm reading this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or a housing project or a whatever, a tiny home lot, whatever it is. The fine print, of course, is within constitutional limitations, and all of that, of course. And I'm oversimplifying the legal aspects. I'm sure there's like lawyers that I'm sure it's whatever. But I think the point is that a lot of power is given to the city council to move on what they view as the community's public will or the public good, if there is such a thing anymore. I think there is. And why can they do that? Because we always have the ability to get rid of them or change. There's always the check. There's always the check of the people say, no, hold on, dude, you've gone way too far. We're kicking your butt out of here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next slide.
I mean, this is amazing. Just they're writing the laws, they're enforcing it, and they're enforcing laws in regards to taking away property. This, like you said, it is very broad, but it gives them so much power. And when we have these conversations, they seem so helpless in what it is they can do. And it's like, well, in regards to homelessness, I don't know if this is constitutional or not, but could you say, hey, we're not going to sell property to, um, you know, these fund managers and companies that just come in and buy these units and then put everyone out and raise the rent by 1,000 or $500 and say, oh well, we're doing these upgrades and this, that, and the other, and then they get away with it. And we know that this is destructive in every place that these big companies come in here and just buy housing. So do they have the power to say, no, we're not selling, we're not going to allow that to happen here in our city?
All right, the next slide. Let's see. The mayor. Okay. I don't want to leave the mayor out. So we have a mayor city council where the mayor is the city manager. Some places you'll just have the city council and you'll have a professional city manager that's just hired to manage stuff. That's my preferred way, but with the added mayor, so what we have is a little extra politics that goes on, right, between the mayor and the city council, which I don't think needs to happen at the city level, but this is my own personal crazy thoughts. That would be a big change in city government. But anyway, so as it is now, though, the mayor has the power, basically, to carry out the wishes of the city council. He's the chief executive. He's the boss. He's the boss of the city that really runs things day to day. He's the one that makes sure that the laws are get enforced. He's the one that works with the chief of police. And this is one of the checks. If it's a really super unjust law, you could have a situation where the mayor and chief of police would say, we're not enforcing it. And actually, you actually saw some of that on the anti-vax side in parts of Washington this year, where the police said, nope, we're not enforcing, or the mayor, whoever said, we're not enforcing that vaccine law here. So there's that check. Anyways, shall have supervisors shall see that all contracts agreements are made, basically following the city council's wishes. The budget. Here's where my feeling has always been that the mayor, it's like leave the budget up to us, let the professionals get it done. We'll give the budget, and then it always feels like the city council kind of rubber stamps it. It's like he comes up with the budget and he rubber stamps it, and then he doesn't supply the data to actually analyze whether it's working or not, which really bothers me. But that's a whole nother side. Maybe have you got him? I would love to have him on for questions sometime, or see him anywhere for questions. I don't know.
I would hope that we can. We got a smart guy in the chat there. Rob says, Kitsap County commissioners for districts 1 and 2 make $148,000, and District 3 makes $138,000. So, as you were saying in the slide previous, where they have the power to create what the salaries are, it's like, Man, you're making 150 grand to be a commissioner? I mean, what a sweet gig.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get back to the salary here in just a minute because there's a flip side of that. That's
Thank you
kind
for
of
that,
the
Rob.
whole. Yeah. So, but anyway, so according to the budget, but according to this, so shall prepare and submit to council a proposed budget. Which, okay, you could read that oh, he writes the budget, but and in my non-legal professional background, everything else is advise and suggest and propose. I take more here as this is the proposed budget, like the president submits a budget, and depending on which party's in power, they either toss it and start over, or right, it's all. But anyway, so that's the mayor. That's a big job. He gets paid $120,000, I think. A flip side, the city council, who are in charge of setting the direction of the city, of overseeing everything, making sure everything runs right, they get 12 grand a year. They do not get a livable wage to do what they're doing, in my opinion. And I think that's a real drawback. So that means that they are dependent on the person they're supposed to be evaluating to give them the information. And I would love to see a more professionally paid city council and some support staff directed to them. Like the Congress has their own research service, the Congressional Research Service. And so they'll say, oh, well, like basic questions like, it came up, the MFTs, they talk oh my goodness, we'll have to have a thing on this MFT, the multifamily tax exemption.
Mhm.
With that, they, shoot, I lost my train of thought again.
You're explaining the multifamily tax exemption. Something bad about it.
Yeah, well, yeah. So okay, yes, I'm sorry. So the basic data they wanted to get was, does it pencil out? Can you just show us that it pencils out? And the basic answer was, and that we don't have time to really do that math for you. And by the way, along with this, I don't know, I could put up a link or give you a link somewhere to. I've been just saving a copy of all the meetings that they've had relating to housing. And the MFTEs, and so I have that on my YouTube site, and it's just straight the whole thing. It's just so if people want to look at that. But
Yeah, we
anyway.
definitely need to cover that. Rob is back in the chat again. He says the source for those stats was in an article from the Kitsap Sun from December 19, and it goes on to state that they were to receive an 8% raise per year through this year. And so, just as you were saying, council persons are receiving $1,000 a month, where these county commissioners are receiving more than 10 times that amount, right? It's like, holy crap, man.
I think everybody should just get the median wage of a Bremerton resident.
Seems pretty
The whole
fair
county.
to me.
The whole county.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the max pay you can make as an elected. I don't know. Anyway, next. Let's see. What was the next slide? I think is that it.
Yeah. Let me get there.
Oh, this is where I was just bringing this up. Yeah. All right. The red lettering's a little over the top.
Well, I want to read it. Bad government warning. The people in charge of writing the laws, setting the budget, and providing oversight for a $250 million budget are not getting paid a livable wage. Jeff, how is our budget $250 million? How is that money flowing into our county? Or is that the city?
That's the city.
How is the city of Bremerton getting $250 million annually?
There's the budget, and I think that would be a really good whole nother topic of just looking at the budget. A friend of mine, Michael, who's also on your cast every once in a while here, he's been looking into the budget. He's an MBA, so that's his whole thing. Is looking at budgets. I'm not, so I don't know what to look for. What I do see in the budget or what I don't see in the budget for Bremerton is anything for housing. They mentioned $100,000 for fixing leaky roofs, and they mention it everywhere, but that's all I can find. That there's, and that's the thing. So we can buy this land, we could do all this. It seems, why aren't we? There's just, and the reading I've gotten off the mayor is that that's a red line, right? That he will not see. He does not want the city for some reason to go into that area of providing services to people. It seems like of providing housing, and I'm not sure why that is. But that seems to be a really hard, like during the planning session, if you watch the planning sessions, he pushes pretty hardly. Well, make me an offer of how much you want to buy that land for, and we can talk. So it's nothing about, I don't know. I haven't heard him talk anything about like land trusts and other things that cities have been using. But anyway, so that's yeah. I think we should pair it. And another note, the city council. There's a committee. Okay, so again, check and balance, I guess. So the mayor appoints a committee that sets the city council's salary. I don't think he doesn't have control over those people. They seem to me they're members of the community, but there is a committee meeting right now to set the salaries of the city council members, and I would urge people to up that money, because you want the people that are providing oversight to be paid well. It's just a common thing, right? And it is a lot of work, and also it's an equity matter. I think I'm getting off on this tangent, but it's a huge equity matter. I mean, who can afford to put in? I mean, if you really were going to do this job the way it should be done, it's a full-time job. It's easily a full-time or more job. So who can do that? Only somebody who's rich and has a lot of free time, right? You have other,
which means they're out of touch,
Yeah.
typically, right?
Yeah.
To your point, Anna and Jennifer were at the Kids Up Strong event this morning, and that went from 8:30 to 11. So, with the, coming a little bit early to, kind of meet and greet and staying after to, shake hands and pass out business cards. Let's call it 3 hours, right? And at $1,000 a month, you're talking about $250 a week.
Right.
They just spent 3 hours, in one part of their morning on one day. So you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, they're probably getting $5 an hour, maybe less, for the work that they're supposed to put in. So I would agree with you. It should definitely be more than 1,000. Don't think it should be 114,000 or 148,000 like the commissioners. But it should be enough so that they can actually focus on governance and not have to worry about, am I going to be able to pay my rent? Because I know that is one of the challenges with Jennifer.
Yeah.
She does multiple things because no one's living off $1,000 a month in this county.
Right.
It just ain't happening. Probably nowhere in the country, but definitely not in this county for sure. So I definitely agree with that. But it also shouldn't be so high that it gives opportunities for corruption and oh yeah, I'll do this for you and I'll do that for you.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, political scientists will tell you that the lower that you get more corruptions, the less you pay your people, right?
Really?
I mean, if you're not, if people, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to go there into that, but there's a lot of research that shows that, well, I don't know. I don't think our congressmen, I don't think they live on their pay mostly. I think that they live on payments or whatever. They're whatever their money. Anyways, I'm getting off track and rambling.
Jeff, it sounds like you do a really good job in life of biting your tongue, and you must have all these scabs that have healed over. Because I see you catching yourself, and it's like, nah, I better not say that. Let me find a better way to say this. So we will definitely have to do a Jeff Unleashed show where it's a
not safe for work version.
It's like I got to keep my job. So Rob has a question. He says, "How much of that comes from the shipyard? That $250 million? Do you know, Jeff?"
Oh, I don't know if any of it does. But some of it comes through grants and um, actually, I don't know that. That's a good question. That's a good question.
You know, it is a good question. And when you think about, numbers, you hear 250 million, that it's a big number on the one hand, and you're like, man, 250 million for what, 330,000 people in the county, but we're talking about the city, right? So there's not even that many people in the city, which is a ton of money. But when you think about it, you think of how fast $250 million goes, it's like that. Like there's never enough money. And then
Well,
nationally,
when 30 million goes to the police, it goes away pretty quick. Or 20 million. We're spending. I don't know. I think we're spending a lot of money on police in this town. But I don't. I just think we got to take care of the problems before they get to the point where the police need to deal with it. But that
well, and
costs
they'll tell
money.
you they're woefully underfunded if you talk to the police.
Uh, I got nothing to say on that one. I know, yeah, all these things I could go on for a little bit.
I told you, you're a professional tongue biter.
I'm getting tired too. I should probably call it a night here.
All right, so I went to the next slide for you.
Sorry. I forgot the most important page. Is this the recall initiative and referendum, which I really like. Which again is the ability of the people to sign a petition to have their city either create a new law or get rid of a law they don't like, or remove somebody from office. A really cool test of this, which I think would be a perfect use of this from a political scientist point of view, is the fireworks. People can say, "Oh, we need to get rid of this fireworks," and I'm like, "But you got it seems like you get just as many people saying, I like blowing stuff up once a year, you know." And I'm kind of agnostic about it myself, but it seems like that would be the perfect thing to have a referendum. Let's vote it out. Let's see how everybody feels. You know, if there's not a majority for getting rid of fireworks, then we don't. To me, that instead of, I don't know, they're going to have hearings and do all this talk about stuff. But anyways, that's my side on that. Anybody wants a homework assignment? It's to get a petition for a fireworks ban.
I think that would be a great college project or a high school project to try as an exercise. To me, that seems really practical. Instead of having all of these, open sessions and conversations and research, just put it out to the people and have them, kind of vote on it.
For some things, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely for some things. And
So,
if you have a solution that's not being implemented, you can say, "Oh, we really want you to do this." Like, and that's kind of what the Seattle 135 initiative is. It's basically saying that let's take a whole different approach to housing and low-income housing, and let's set up a professional part of our city government to do nothing but focus on developing, but still owning the land for public house, for social housing. So it's a whole social housing model that I'm just learning about. And, but something like that, where you say, okay, here's a solution. This is what you want. We want you to try. And it's a solution that, it goes it's such a 180-degree turn towards, away from away from the market and towards like focusing on need and supply that it's hard to do through the typical electoral process, I think. But again, that's my point.
Jeff, have you ever been a part of a petition where you were kind of part of the organizing body?
No, I have not. And this is new. This is special. This is unique to the state of Washington. So I have not lived in a state that had such a welcoming, popular mechanism for changing things.
I just wonder, I would be interested in maybe trying to, solicit a petition on housing and just seeing how many signatures we can get. And one, it gives us an opportunity to do some outreach and take the
Right.
pulse of the folks in the community and meet more folks and educate people, and just kind of see where we stand, and see if we can get some traction in that.
That sounds cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, if anyone is out there listening that has any experience with that, please reach out, because we definitely could use your help. We don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
So we
maybe
can bring
somebody's a
in.
lawyer out there that has some background in that.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, you kind of figure these things are slow going. Like you'll see folks at Walmart, sign this petition. Like, how long are those signatures valid for before you have to get them to
Yeah,
re-sign?
yeah.
Because that's a lot of, seems like there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be built in order to plan and then execute something like that. So,
I'm
but
sure
yeah,
there's a lot of processes and procedures, yes.
yeah, but I'd be
Which is
interested
fine,
in
yeah.
that. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah, me too.
soliciting, maybe folks at the college and some poli sci folks and some folks at the high school, I think would be a great project.
Cool.
All right, so are you on your last slide here?
I
Oh,
think so, yeah.
you made it to the end.
Ah.
All right. Is it okay to email out the slide if anyone
Yeah,
requests?
yeah, yeah. I
And
think
should
that was
they?
the last one, yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay. Should they request that from you or send it to the conduit? Does it matter?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter? Okay. So I will need to paste this somewhere where I have access to it because it is not in. Let me put it in my favorites here so that I have it. All right. All right. So if you want those slides, just reach out to the conduit. We may also have a way to put that onto our website. So stay tuned for that. Jeff, I definitely appreciate, all the work that you put into
Oh, it's
creating
fun.
this slide.
It's fun.
Well, it's all this collateral, duties, right? It's like, hey, man, I want to get this information out. I want folks to be educated. I want to share this information. It's like, okay, as soon as I get off work and do all these other things, I'll try to work on this, on top of everything else. Oh, and attend the council meeting also. So I just want to say that I appreciate all the work that you're doing in the community. It's very empowering. I'm just sitting here riveted. Like I've got all these questions, like, all right, well, what about this? What about that?
My pleasure. Yeah. We'll have more conversations. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, we'll definitely have to do some kind of a social that's not during your working hours, so you can
Yeah.
participate in it. Today was a really good one, so it got
Oh,
pretty
cool.
fiery on there. So if you get a chance, go back and watch that one. And yeah, we'll have to do that because we want to make sure that we're doing things that are accessible for a lot of people. I'll tell the audience that we have something in the works plan. Stay tuned. It's a little too early to announce, but we will probably be announcing it maybe next Wednesday. That might sound pretty good. So that should be pretty exciting. We will meet next Wednesday, even though there isn't a council meeting next Wednesday. Do you want to meet at 5 since there's no meeting, or do you want to meet later in the evening after the council meeting? 7 is which is when we would typically come on. What works better for you?
7 sounds good.
7.
Yeah.
All right. So next week there's no council meeting, but we will have our show, but it will start again at 7 p.m. So we'll create the link, we'll send it out, send your questions in. Jeff talked about the multifamily tax. There's lots of different things that you've heard, things that he brought up and say, hey, we should do a show about that. So let us know because we want to provide that information to you and really empower you through knowledge, which is really big. So where can they join the Facebook page if they want to do that?
Oh, let me see that. Let me put that in there.
All right, he's going to put that in the chat. And as Jeff is putting that in the chat.
I see the private chat. I don't see the regular chat.
No, that's okay. I'll put it in the. Okay. You have to access the regular chat. You would have to be watching the show either on Facebook or YouTube.
Okay.
As far as I know, I'm pretty sure that's the right answer. Okay. But if you want to join the Facebook page, there is the link there.
Come over, John. Join the conversation over there too. Let's keep the conversation going everywhere.
Yeah, no, and that's really what it's going to take for the change, right? We can tell them what we want, but we have to hold them accountable. And it's the voices. It really is we the people. So, all right, people, we the people. Let's do it. Jeff, I'm gonna give you the last word.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate everything you're doing, and look forward to next week.
Absolutely. All right. A little bit of theme music there as we go on out. So until next time, for Jeff Campbell, I'm Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. All right, everybody.